Chapter 32-34. Before Zi-Chen's consciousness disappeared, he saw a mutant beast. At this point, he was very sure that there was a mutant beast in the heavenly wind of annihilation. After that, he didn't know anything until he opened his eyes again. There was a blank look in his eyes. Where is this? His consciousness gradually returned, and he recalled what had happened. I saw a mutant beast in the heavenly wind of annihilation. Am I dead? His consciousness regained control of his body, and he discovered that his body was unscathed, and his world was also intact. It was just that the spiritual power in his world was a little chaotic and had suffered some damage. Heaven Breaker was still in his world, and he asked, "What happened?" "I don't know." Heaven Breaker shook his head. In reality, he had already prepared himself to die with Zi-Chen. Right at this moment, a strong wind appeared. Zi-Chen felt his vision blur, and he saw a black mutant beast standing in front of him. The mutant beast was about 3 meters long, and its body was covered in black scales. Its appearance was very menacing, and after it appeared, it slowly circled around Zi-Chen. At this moment, there was confusion in its eyes. Zi-Chen's heart jolted. This was the mutant beast in the heavenly wind of annihilation. It didn't kill him, and it even brought him here. He sat up, and he didn't move. The mutant beast arrived in front of Zi-Chen and looked at him just like that. The emotions in the mutant beast's eyes fluctuated, and it seemed to want to get closer to Zi-Chen, but it was also very uncertain. At times, there was confusion, and at times, there was brutality. "Who are you?" Zi-Chen asked. The mutant beast didn't reply, and it only looked at Zi-Chen. This made Zi-Chen even more nervous, and he couldn't determine its intentions. Why is it like this? Zi-Chen was very exasperated. At this moment, Heaven Breaker had already seen what was happening outside through Zi-Chen's world, and he clearly didn't know what was going on. "Why don't you come out?" Zi-Chen suggested. "Let's see if it'll attack you." Heaven Breaker shook his head in dissatisfaction. "You want to kill me? This guy looks a little stupid, but it's very powerful, okay? Then what should I do? We can't always look at each other like this, right?" Zi-Chen said, "What if it gets annoyed and tries to kill me? Look at its silly appearance, it doesn't seem to have much intelligence. Why don't you go up and touch it? How about we improve our relationship?" Heaven Breaker suggested. "It's no less dangerous than you coming out to try it, right?" Zi-Chen said in annoyance. "I definitely won't go out. 1 death is better than 2 deaths. "You can try," Heaven Breaker said. "Why don't you set up your defenses first, just in case?" Although Heaven Breaker's idea was very bad, it seemed that there was no other way. In the end, they couldn't just look at each other like this. Therefore, Zi-Chen tried to stretch out his palm. Little by little, a smile appeared on his face, trying his best not to provoke the other party. The strange beast continued to stare at Zi-Chen, the confusion in its eyes growing stronger. It then looked at his outstretched hand and opened its mouth. Zi-Chen was startled, and he quickly stopped his right hand. The power of law appeared on his body, forming a defense. As soon as this defense appeared, the mutated beast's blank eyes glowed. It quickly rushed forward and opened its mouth, charging directly towards Zi-Chen. Zi-Chen wanted to retreat, but the strange beast was simply too fast. Just as Zi-Chen was about to give up, the strange beast arrived before him and licked Zi-Chen's hand. "There's a chance, there's a chance," Heaven Breaker yelled upon seeing this. "It's your power, the power of a heaven-defying cultivator. This idiot has recognized your power. Remove the light barrier and activate the heaven-defying laws." Zi-Chen could see that the strange beast was much more excited than before, and it didn't possess any hostility. Thus, he did as Heaven Breaker said and removed the defense formed by the power of the heaven-defying laws. Following the appearance of the heaven-defying laws, the strange beast became even more excited. It started to jog around Zi-Chen, rubbing its body against Zi-Chen from time to time. This made Zi-Chen's heart tremble with fear. After all, this was the true body of the heavenly beast of annihilation. If it accidentally released a gust of heavenly annihilation wind, he would die a tragic death. Just as Zi-Chen was completely relaxed, The heaven-defying laws around him suddenly flowed toward the strange beast and entered its body. The strange beast's body began to glow, and the light formed a projection in the air above it. Following the emergence of this projection, the entire void seemed to have fallen into a state of stillness. The strange beast's eyes lost their luster, and it stood there motionlessly. The projection stood in the air above the strange beast with its hands clasped behind its back, and it looked down upon all living beings. Master! Within Zichen's world, Heavenbreaker yelled with excitement. Zichen was also extremely astonished as he looked at this projection. He had seen this person twice before. Even though he could only see the back of this person on both occasions, he knew in the instant that he saw this projection, that this was the person who had given him the greatest shock. It was as if heaven and earth had descended upon this world. Have you finally reached this stage? Congratulations, a lucky descendant who has experienced countless trials and tribulations. The projection spoke with a very gentle voice, which was completely different from the aura it was releasing at this moment. Master! Zichen's world opened, and Heavenbreaker appeared from within. He raised his head to look at the projection, and his emotions were very emotional. Long time no see. The projection looked at Heavenbreaker. Tears flowed from Heavenbreaker's eyes. You really did meet Heavenbreaker. It seems that your luck is quite good. Well, since you've reached this stage and successfully awakened me, then I'll give you a gift. The projection seemed to be smiling. What's going on? Who are you? Zichen asked in confusion. This was the question he was most concerned about. He was more concerned about it than any gift. I was originally a person, but now I'm a consciousness. The projection said. Zichen shook his head and said, I want to know who you were originally, and what's going on. I'm the same as you, a cultivator. Of course, in that era, there were people who called me the God of Thunder, the projection said. God of Thunder. Zichen was shocked. Clearly, this God of Thunder was definitely not a god from the God realm. He was a real god. It's just a name. How can there be a god in this world? Back then, I was injured, and my great enemy Stu suddenly attacked me. After a great battle, I was no match for Stu, so I left behind my inheritance. You, on the other hand, exist because you have obtained my inheritance, said the light figure. Stu? Who's that? Up until now, the strongest person Zichen had seen was a heavenly god, and Sammy was the first heavenly god. Could Sammy have lied? Was he actually called Stu? Was he an enemy of the God of Thunder? Stu is my enemy. As for other things, I don't know much. I'm just a consciousness, so my knowledge is limited. I'm here to give you a gift. As for what you're going to do next, I don't know. The projection's light dimmed a lot, and so did the might of the world. What gift? Zichen asked. A seal. The silhouette suddenly dispersed, turning into two light seals. These two seals exuded a strong soul aura. One flew towards Zichen, and the other flew towards the motionless beast. It's called the Annihilation Heavenly Beast. It's yours from now on. Chapter 32-35. The light seal disappeared after entering Zichen's soul. It wrapped around a small ball of light that contained the shadow of the Annihilation Sky Beast. It immediately fused with Zichen's soul. Zichen was all too familiar with this scene. It had recognized him as its master. At the same time, another light seal entered the Annihilation Sky Beast's consciousness. The Annihilation Sky Beast opened its eyes. Unlike the pure excitement or confusion from before, this time, there was a light in its eyes. This light represented wisdom. Greetings, Master, the Annihilation Sky Beast said. It prostrated itself in the void and bowed to Zichen. If the Annihilation Sky Beast had been a little dumb before, then its soul had been restored. Its voice was very clear. You're called Tianfeng? Zichen asked. After recognizing him as its master, Tianfeng had a connection with him. He could only feel Tianfeng's friendliness. He could no longer sense Tianfeng's threat. He still had many doubts in his heart. Unfortunately, the light figure didn't say anything and disappeared just like that. Yes, Master, Tianfeng said respectfully. Why did you appear here? Zichen asked again. Why did you destroy those law fragments? Tianfeng shook his head. I don't know. I've been muddle-headed before and have forgotten many things. There seems to be a voice telling me to destroy this place. This place? Zichen looked at Tianfeng. Yes, destroy everything here, Tianfeng said. Zichen was still very confused. At that moment, Heavenbreaker's voice rang out. It's this region, or rather, the palace that Sami oversees. Zichen turned to Heavenbreaker and asked, What do you know? Stu might be in that core palace, Heavenbreaker said. That should be the core of Stu's world. You know Stu? I've seen him. Zichen was shocked when he heard this, and he said, What exactly do you know? I don't know much, Heavenbreaker said. My memory is also affected. When I suddenly saw Master earlier, I was emotional and only remembered some things. Stu was Master's enemy. Master died because Stu ambushed Master when Master was injured. Seeing Zichen's shocked expression, Heavenbreaker said, That Stu is indeed powerful, but I'm sure he's heavily injured after his battle with Master. Judging from the current situation in the divine realm, Stu's injuries must not have healed yet. So, you might be able to kill him. The situation in the God realm? What do you mean? The divine world is the divine world, and the life star is the life star. They are two completely different worlds. Heavenbreaker said, The reason why the divine realm has been suppressing the life stars is that they don't want the heaven-defying experts on the life stars to grow and become a threat to the divine realm. Making the heaven-defying warriors reincarnate again and again when they were weak was Stu's plan against the life stars. The existence of the heavenly wind is to prevent the God realm from healing. This should be a trap set up by Master before he died. Zichen still didn't understand what Heavenbreaker was saying. Heavenbreaker thought for a moment and said, You have your own world. You should understand that, right? Zichen nodded. His world was said to be perfect with all kinds of rules. It wasn't less than a real world. The life star is Master's world. After he died, he left his inheritance. You're the one who got the inheritance. There's one such person in every generation. They're called the heaven-defying warriors. That's why the fortune of the entire world is on you. It will grow as you grow stronger. You're a heaven-defying warrior. You're like Master that year. Zichen's eyes brightened. So, the divine world is the world called Stu? His position in the divine world is the same as mine in the life star. That's right. Heavenbreaker nodded. The divine world and the life star are different. They belong to two different worlds. They shouldn't have any connection. But why are the two worlds in this world? I guess it's something Master did before he died. Don't look at me like that. It's just my guess. Because I died too fast, I didn't know about the great battle after that. Tell me what you know, said Zichen. I don't know much. What I'm telling you now is just my guess. But there's one thing I'm sure of. Stu has always wanted to swallow Master's world to strengthen himself. This time, the two worlds are in the same world. Perhaps it's because the worlds are swallowing each other. And he hasn't swallowed the life star yet. You know why, don't you? Heavenbreaker looked at Zichen and asked. You mean that Stu's world has a loophole that prevents it from becoming complete? Zichen turned to look at Tianfeng. Tianfeng is that loophole. He's destroying the fragments of Stu's world. He's trying to stop Stu's world from recovering. At the same time, if Stu's world can't become complete, his wounds won't heal. That way, Stu can't swallow the life star. Heavenbreaker nodded. Although I don't know the truth, I think so too. The reason why the divine world's rules weren't stable was that the world was incomplete. That was why it needed a heavenly god to guard it. Sami wasn't lying. But the rest wasn't true at all. Lian Ye had told Zichen that there were only two ways for the god race to leave that land. One was to destroy Tianfeng and disappear. The other was to get enough heavenly god law fragments to stabilize the divine world. Did this mean that Stu could recover if he got more heavenly god law fragments? These were all Zichen's guesses. Obviously, he wasn't sure either. But he was sure of one thing. He was a heaven-defying one. The heavens that he defied were exactly this area and the temple where Sami was. Sami had once said that there was light and darkness in the world. This wasn't right. In this land, there was only light and no darkness. Combined with Heaven-breaker's guesses, his guess was pretty close. The heaven-defying one on the Life Star had reincarnated when he was a saint. It was because of Stu. He wanted to stop the Life Star from growing and creating a situation where it could fight against the divine world. The reason was that Heaven-breaker's master had left Tianfeng and the inheritance of the heaven-defying one. Tianfeng could stop Stu from recovering, and the heaven-defying one could threaten Stu in the future. Stu couldn't do anything to Tianfeng, so he could only attack the heaven-defying one and stop them from growing. But if that was the case, why did he let Zi Chen go at the critical moment? Why did he let Zi Chen grow until now? He would only know the answer to this question when he saw Sammy again. He checked his body and found that he wasn't injured. Next, it was time for him to do his own thing. Chapter 32-36. In the past, the Wind of Annihilation was extremely terrifying to Zi Chen. It was a threat. But now, the Wind of Annihilation had become Zi Chen's help. After informing the Wind of Annihilation to wait outside, Zi Chen walked into the Wind of Annihilation. In the next moment, the Wind of Annihilation formed a storm and swept his body away. Standing in the Wind of Annihilation, Zi Chen could occasionally see pieces of law fragments appearing in front of him. These fragments could create celestial gods and could be easily obtained, but Zi Chen did not take them. Because every celestial god that appeared could stabilize the god realm a little. This was something Zi Chen did not want to see. Therefore, he could only let these law fragments disappear. In just a moment, he had arrived at the core area. The Wind of Annihilation disappeared, and Zi Chen walked forward. He saw the law light shield, and the coldness in his eyes became even more intense. At this moment, a celestial god flew out of the law light shield. He saw Zi Chen in front of him and could not help but be startled. Then, he exclaimed, "Zi Chen, you're still alive?" Zi Chen looked at the celestial god and said, "What do you mean? Lord Sami said you were killed by the Annihilation heavenly beast. I didn't expect you to still be alive. This is great. I'll go and tell everyone. I believe they will be very happy when they hear that you're alive." The celestial god turned around and entered the law light shield again. Then, he shouted, "Zi Chen is still alive. His back." The celestial god from before was called Elvin. Judging from the expression on his face, it was obvious that Sami did not tell them the truth. Elvin's voice rang out in this area. The celestial gods who were still here were startled and then walked out of the room. Pagoda Battle Celestial God and the others were the first to come out. After seeing Zi Chen outside the law light shield, a look of joy immediately appeared on his face. "What? Zi Chen is still alive?" In the hall, Sammy's expression changed slightly when he heard Elvin's words. "Is that really the case? That man is a manifestation of the Wind of Obliteration, not the real Zi Chen. Don't let him in." Sammy's voice soon came out of the palace. Upon hearing this voice, all the Empyrean gods were startled. They looked at Zi Chen in confusion. "What are you waiting for? Stop him." Sammy's voice sounded again. "If we let him in, this world will be destroyed, and all of us will die." On one side was Zi Chen, and on the other side was Sir Sami. These heavenly gods didn't hesitate for too long. They all poured their power into the light shield, trying to block Zi Chen outside. Compared to Zi Chen, they were obviously more willing to trust Master Sami. Through the barrier, Pagoda Battle God and the others looked at Zi Chen who was standing outside. Lian Ya asked, "Zi Chen, what is going on?" Zi Chen said, "Sami is going to kill me." "What?" Pagoda Battle God and the others' expressions changed greatly. The other heavenly gods' expressions also changed. Zi Chen stood outside the light shield, looked at the heavenly gods, and said, "Get out of the way. My purpose today is to kill Sami. Once he is dead, you will be free, and I will take you back to the divine realm. Don't listen to his nonsense. He is not Zi Chen. The real Zi Chen has been killed by the Beast of Obliteration. He is a manifestation of the Beast of Obliteration. Don't let him in." Sami's voice sounded again. "Let him in, and all of us will die." The heavenly gods didn't know who to believe, but at this moment, they were already on guard against Zi Chen. Naturally, they couldn't let him in. Chen shook his head and said coldly, "It seems that you don't know anything about what I have experienced. Well, I will let you see if everything here can stop me." As soon as he finished speaking, the wind of obliteration appeared behind Chen. This wind bypassed Chen and went toward the light shield in front of him. In the blink of an eye, the outside of the light shield was filled with the wind. All the heavenly gods' faces turned pale. The light shield began to distort, and in an instant, it exploded. Chen stood in the middle of the storm and walked into this area. All the heavenly gods were shocked. At this moment, they already believed Sammy's words, because Chen could already control the wind. Naturally, he was a manifestation of the wind. However, at this moment, their faces were also filled with fear. This was because Chen would be even more terrifying. With just a thought, the wind of obliteration could kill them. At this moment, there was a sudden burst of laughter. The wind of obliteration that was raging all around suddenly disappeared. In the sky above the hall, a colorful beam of light shot up into the sky and landed in the void. The space there began to be destroyed, and a figure appeared out of thin air. That figure was the beast of obliteration. At this moment, it was tied up by a long rope that emitted a colorful light. Sammy, who had been unable to do anything to the beast of obliteration for so many years, had actually caught the beast of obliteration. How was this possible? Chen's face revealed a look of astonishment. As I expected, this idiot's soul can only be used by my God-binding rope when his soul is intact. In the hall, Sammy's complacent laughter could be heard. Chen, now you should understand why I let you live. I'm setting a trap, an earth-shattering trap. From now on, there will be no more life stars in this world. Everyone, quickly kill Chen, and then we'll leave this place. The heavenly gods looked at each other, not knowing what to do. What, you don't want to leave? Let me tell you, the reason we've been staying here is because of Chen. As long as he dies, all of us can return to the god realm. Sammy said, now that I've caught the beast of obliteration, Chen is just like you, a heavenly god. Naturally, he's no threat to you. These heavenly gods were eager to leave this place. Now that there was an opportunity, they naturally did not want to miss it. Everyone was a heavenly god, and they had an absolute advantage in numbers. Killing Chen naturally would not be too difficult. A chill appeared in the surroundings. A heavenly god charged towards Chen. He mobilized the power of laws and threw a punch straight at Chen's face. Seeing the incoming heavenly gods, a cold light flashed in Chen's eyes. He also threw a punch. This punch flickered with the light of yin and yang. It was his full strength. With a loud boom, the heavenly god was sent flying. Chen stood in place, not moving at all. When the other heavenly gods saw this, not only did they not feel fear, but they also saw hope and charged forward. A great battle erupted. The light of yin and yang flashed on Chen's body. He mobilized his heaven-defying power and punched out again and again. Bang, bang, bang. One heavenly god after another was sent flying by him. However, they were all heavenly gods who had fused with complete law crystals. They were equivalent to Zeus in the past. Not only could they mobilize the power of laws, but their vitality was also ridiculously powerful. Chen was facing a group of heavenly gods now. He could easily crush them, but it was obviously extremely difficult to kill them. Rumbling sounds continued to sound. Those heavenly gods were sent flying, but they, who were not in danger, would charge again. Clearly, the battle would continue endlessly until one side died from exhaustion. This side would be Chen. This was because he discovered that his world was actually unable to extract power from this space. In other words, when his vast sea of energy was exhausted, it would be the time of his death. Chapter 32-37. The 9 heavenly gods stood there, looking at the battle in front of them, not knowing what to do. The battle happened so quickly that they did not know what to do. Attack Chen? Obviously, they could not do that. Pagoda battle, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and kill Chen. Sammy's cold voice rang out in the hall. Why should we kill Chen? He gave us so many law fragments. Lian Ye said loudly, if not for Chen, we would have suffered great losses. As long as we kill him, We won't have any losses in the future. Sami said calmly, if we don't kill him, all of us will die. On the other side, the battle was still going on. Lian Ya watched as Zichen fought against a group of heavenly gods alone. The other 8 heavenly gods were also watching from afar. Compared to Sami, they were more willing to believe in Zichen. This had nothing to do with their positions, they just believed in Zichen as a person. At this moment, Zichen's cold voice rang out. Die! We are all heavenly gods, and we have the absolute advantage in numbers. What do you have to kill us? One of the heavenly gods sneered. At this moment, the other heavenly gods had already surrounded Zichen, and they all laughed loudly. Good. Zichen looked around and said indifferently, didn't you want my cultivation technique? I said that my cultivation technique is unique, but I believe that you still don't believe me. Today, I'll show you the true difference between us as heavenly gods. As soon as he finished speaking, Zichen's aura changed. The violent light of the lightning body faded away, and his body was completely filled with the power of yin and yang, each occupying half of his body. In the next moment, 2 rays of light flew out from Zichen's body. These were 2 rays of pure yin and yang energy. The 2 rays of energy soared into the sky, converging and twisting in the air. A mighty aura appeared in the air, and all the heavenly gods who sensed this aura were shocked. They looked up at the sky and saw a huge yin-yang diagram appear in the sky. The yin-yang diagram rotated slowly like a millstone. The surrounding space twisted crazily, and countless cracks appeared. This yin-yang diagram was created by Zichen after he had further mastered the heaven-defying power of yin and yang. This was the most perfect application of the power of yin and yang, and its power was much stronger than the yin-yang thunder lotus. Only at the heavenly deity realm could he successfully achieve this. Sensing the terrifying aura released by the yin-yang diagram, fear appeared in the eyes of all the heavenly gods. They felt an intense threat. Zichen stood under the yin-yang diagram and said indifferently, I'll give you one more chance. Either back off or die. The expressions of the heavenly deities changed. What are you afraid of? We are heavenly deities. Other than the heavenly wind of annihilation, what other power in this world can kill us? A heavenly deity loudly said, now that the annihilating wind has disappeared, we are the indestructible heavenly deities of this world. A cold light flashed in Zichen's eyes. A ray of light fell from each of the rotating yin-yang diagrams. The 2 forces of yin and yang struck the heavenly deity. The heavenly deity's body trembled as if he had been struck by lightning. His body trembled and turned into specks of energy that dissipated. A heavenly deity dissipated into the world. As if he had been swept away by the heavenly wind of annihilation, he turned into nothingness and died. Seeing their companion disappear, the other heavenly deities all showed fear on their faces. Zichen's gaze moved again and fell on the other heavenly deities. He said, I forgot to tell you. Other than the heaven-defying power, the law I comprehended is destruction itself. It destroys everything in this world, including order. The fear in the eyes of the heavenly deities became even more intense. Zichen sighed and said, I planned to let you go earlier, but unfortunately, you were courting death. In truth, your existence is a threat to the life star itself. I also hesitated for a long time to let you go. After saying that, the yin-yang diagram in the sky rotated again and shot out rays of yin and yang light. Wherever these rays of light passed, all order in the world was destroyed, including the laws of the heavenly deities. The heavenly deities wanted to retreat, but they found that their laws had lost their effect and their bodies were under control. When the rays of yin and yang light landed on their bodies, there was no explosion. The bodies of the heavenly deities all turned into nothingness and disappeared. As long as they were alive, the heavenly deity world would become more stable. This was not something Zichen wanted to see. In addition, they did not have a chance to survive, so Zichen did not hold back. In the blink of an eye, the 100 or so heavenly deities were overtaken by the rays of light. Stop! You damnable bastard! Stop! Sami's voice came from the hall, sounding flustered and exasperated. Don't worry, I'll go find you right away. Zichen coldly glanced at the hall. The energy in his body was madly drained. The yin-yang diagram expanded again and the rays of yin and yang light fell everywhere. Miserable screams rang out continuously as one heavenly deity after another disappeared. In just a few moments, only 9 of the 100 or so heavenly deities were still alive. They were the 9 people who had participated in the pagoda battle. At this moment, their faces were filled with shock. After those heavenly deities died, the aura of this world immediately became chaotic. In the periphery of this area, some places began to collapse and merge into the void, never to be restored. Zichen's gaze landed on the hall in front of him. He said, "It's your turn." Tianfeng was still tied up in the air by the 10-colored chain. Rays of power appeared on the chain. Tianfeng's expression was distorted. Clearly, his complete soul was being severely injured. The yin-yang diagram in the air aimed at the hall below. Rays of light fell. Buzz. The hall trembled. A light shield appeared and enveloped the hall. The rays of light landed on it. The attacks that could easily kill heavenly deities before only caused ripples when they landed on the hall. Seeing this, Zichen frowned. The yin-yang diagram expanded again above his head. In his world, the vast sea of energy was disappearing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Activating the yin-yang diagram consumed a lot of energy. 2 rays of light fell. The light shield kept twisting and releasing terrifying waves. But it still did not work. At this moment, Skybreaker's voice rang out. "I remember now. This is Stu's castle. Use the stone saber." With a thought, Zichen's stone saber appeared beside him. He gripped the stone saber tightly and poured his energy into it. The stone saber shone with dazzling light. Despite the influx of energy, the stone saber showed no signs of collapsing. Zichen chopped down with his saber. The saber light shot forward and cut through the void. The light shield shattered with a crack. Chapter 32-38. The 10-colored god binding chains broke, and the annihilation heavenly beast broke free. It turned back into the annihilation heavenly wind and spread out. This area was once again enveloped by the annihilation heavenly wind. Following the death of many heavenly gods, this area was no longer stable and could not stop the annihilation heavenly wind from wreaking havoc. When the annihilation heavenly wind appeared, this area was disappearing. It was the kind that would disappear forever and could not be recovered. Zichen stood in the air, holding the stone saber tightly in his hand. This was the weapon he had obtained from a cave in the abyss. He did not expect that when the 9 extremes weapons could not support his strength, the stone saber could. Moreover, it was very handy. The yin-yang diagram floated above his head and slowly rotated. Beam after beam of light fell and hit the palace below. The palace was rumbling and shaking, but it was not destroyed. "It's useless. With your current strength, you can't break this core palace." Sammy's voice came from the palace. "Come in if you can. Let's have a battle of life and death here." Zichen held the stone saber tightly in his hand and slashed forward again. Rip! The saber light pierced through the air and landed on the palace. The palace began to shake, and a shallow mark appeared on it. The pagoda battle god and the others who were standing in the distance were dumbfounded when they saw this scene. Zichen's previous attack should have been able to kill heavenly gods easily. They did not expect that such a powerful attack would not be able to break this palace. The shallow mark that was left behind earlier was rapidly recovering. Soon, it was as good as new. The result was the same after multiple attacks. Inside the temple, Sammy laughed even more proudly. Light flashed, and Heavenbreaker appeared from the side. He looked at the palace in front of him and said, "The grade of this palace is the same as the Lightning Divine Palace. It's a pity that you did not bring the Lightning Divine Palace. Otherwise, the 2 of them could clash and see who is stronger." Zichen asked, "What should I do now?" "Work together from the inside and outside. Only by doing so can we succeed." Heavenbreaker turned his head and looked at the world around him. He said, "The laws here are completely chaotic and will be destroyed soon. I believe the same is true for the outside world." Only then did Zichen remember that his clone and Li Ari were still outside. He said, "Then you guys go over." Heavenbreaker nodded. He didn't ask what Zichen should do next. If he couldn't kill Sammy and destroy this place, Zichen wouldn't be able to go back. This was his mission as a heaven-defying cultivator. Be careful. Other than Sammy, Stu should be there too. Heavenbreaker took the initiative to tear open a gap in space and turned back to look at Lian Ya and the others. Zichen nodded at them and then rushed toward the main hall with his saber in hand. Let's go. Tarzan sighed as he looked at the hurricane surrounding them. Soon, this place would be filled with the wind of annihilation. If they continued to stay here, they would definitely die. The 9 of them took a deep look at the hall before entering the passageway. When the channel disappeared, they saw that the wind of obliteration had completely destroyed this world and swept toward the temple where Sammy was. In the land of exile, all the God clan members living here were working hard for the lore fragments. It was just that very few people could succeed, or rather, no one could succeed. Lee Ari and his doppelganger were also one of them, but compared to the others, the 2 of them had never given up hope. Still no news of the real body. After another fruitless attempt, Lee Ari looked at his clone and asked. The doppelganger shook his head. No. Even if I tried to contact him, I couldn't. Lee Ari said worriedly, we've been here for a long time. I don't know if everyone is doing well or if the God clan has invaded. The doppelganger's gaze suddenly changed. He looked ahead and said, didn't the wind just leave? Why is it here again? Lee Ari turned his head and looked ahead. It's indeed strange. It wasn't like this in the past. At this moment, a cry of alarm rang out. The 2 of them turned their heads and saw that the wind of obliteration had appeared in all directions. Some God clan members in the distance couldn't dodge in time and were swept away by the wind of obliteration. Their cries of alarm turned into screams of pain. How can this be? The doppelganger's expression changed drastically. Let's go. The 2 of them displayed extreme speed and flew into the distance. However, the wind of obliteration around them became more and more terrifying. There was no place to hide. As the wind of obliteration approached and destroyed everything in its path, and as the God clan members died one after another, Lee Ari was in despair. The doppelganger gritted his teeth. The power of the underworld circulated around his body as he quietly waited for the arrival of the wind of obliteration. He had the heavenly god's bone, so he didn't fear the wind of obliteration in the abyss. In other words, he had survived the wind of obliteration. Now, he wanted to fight again. Perhaps he could send Lee Ari out. The wind of obliteration was getting closer and closer. The doppelganger grabbed Lee Ari's hand and hugged her. He was about to charge into the wind of obliteration to fight for a chance of survival. Buzz. At this moment, a passage appeared in the void behind the 2 of them. Potion's voice rang out. Go. You can't stop the wind of obliteration. Swoosh. Hearing Potion's voice, the doppelganger carried Lee Ari and charged into the passage without hesitation. The next moment, the passage disappeared. The wind of obliteration filled this world, completely destroying this land of exile. Apart from Lee Ari and the doppelganger, all the God clan members died. There was no more land of exile in this world. Zichen charged into the hall with his saber. The beast of obliteration arrived outside the hall. The terrifying wind of obliteration began to wreak havoc, trying to destroy this hall. In the hall, Sami looked at Zichen who walked in. His gaze fell on his stone saber. I didn't expect that all my plans would be ruined by this saber. But I still have a chance. As long as I kill you, everything can go back to normal. At that time, I can naturally turn the tables again. Zichen said indifferently, you won't have that chance. After saying that, Zichen drew his saber. The saber light swept past Sami's body and split him into 2. Seeing Sami's body split into 2, Zichen's expression changed slightly. The saber in his hand slashed horizontally behind him. Boom. Divine light appeared behind him and landed on the stone saber. With a boom, Zichen's body retreated. This is my home ground. What are you going to use to kill me? Sami stood with his spear and looked at Zichen indifferently. Divine light lingered on his body, and a powerful aura surged out of his body. Zichen took a step forward. The hall suddenly shook, and his body froze. Sami's pupils constricted, and he retreated, but only half a step. Time stop. Kai. The saber light appeared, and the state of time stop was interrupted. Sami retreated. A saber mark appeared on his abdomen, and divine blood gurgled out of it. He glanced at the wound, and a cold light immediately appeared in his eyes. Zichen was very surprised. The opponent had avoided the instantaneous time stop. I wanted to play with you, but since you want to die, don't blame me. Divine light burst out from Sami's body, and the original wound healed in an instant. At the same time, the power of laws appeared around the hall and suppressed Zichen. Chapter 32-39. You're courting death by coming here. Sami sneered, and countless power of laws fell on Zichen, forming a strong pressure on him. At the same time, Sami stabbed forward with his spear, and the power of laws flew out from the spear. Zichen felt as if he was carrying a divine mountain on his back, and every movement became extremely difficult. Seeing the spear coming, he could hardly dodge. Puff! The spear pierced his body, and Sami's wild laughter spread throughout the hall. This is the power of laws of the divine realm, which is equivalent to a whole world pressing on you. How can you dodge it? In front of him, Zichen's body dissipated, and Sami's wild laughter stopped. He said in disbelief, "How is this possible?" On the other side of the hall, Zichen stood there, surrounded by the power of yin and yang, and a light shield appeared around his body. The pressure of laws in the hall fell on him and was resolved by him to the greatest extent. He looked at Sami and said, "Have you forgotten who I am? I'm a defiant, and I'm the holder of rules. All the rules in the world are useless in front of me." Looking at Sami, who still couldn't believe what he was seeing, Zichen smiled and said, "I have the world's laws too." He resisted these laws with the laws in his perfect world. A sarcastic smile flashed across his mouth, and he rushed forward with his saber. He performed the 9 deaths of thunder and lightning to the extreme, and a strange force spread out. Wherever this force passed, the laws were restricted, and there was a momentary pause. Sami roared, and the power of laws covered his body, and he stabbed forward with his spear. The stone saber and the spear met, forming a surge of energy. Terrible ripples spread out, and the whole hall was trembling. "I don't believe it." Looking at the wound on his waist, Sami roared and rushed forward again. He rushed forward again and again, and the power of laws in the hall had been used to the limit. Zichen's own world's power lingered, and the laws here were no longer a threat to him. Boom! 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 The two kept fighting, and the hall kept shaking. As the two of them fought fiercely, the laws of the divine world became extremely chaotic. Even though there were 9 heavenly gods present, the divine world still became unstable. One divine mountain after another exploded abruptly. Cracks appeared on the ground one after another. A mountain peak appeared on the flatland, and the river instantly dried up. The god realm was in great turmoil. The 9 great heavenly deities gathered to discuss the origin of the unforeseen event. However, they came up with nothing. Outside the core hall, the annihilation heavenly wind had already destroyed everything around it. The annihilation heavenly beast was like a tornado, constantly attacking the hall. For many years, Sami had controlled the hall to stop the attacks of the annihilation heavenly beast. As a result, the annihilation heavenly beast had not made any progress for many years. At this moment, Sami was fighting Zichen. It was obvious that he had no time to control the temple to resist. Under such circumstances, the annihilation heavenly beast continued to attack. Gradually, a crack appeared on the outside of the palace. Zichen's world was also in turmoil. Similar to the situation in the god world, numerous spirit mountains were destroyed, and countless living beings were affected. Divine punishment. The divine spear in Sami's hand flew forward. Streaks of divine light surrounded the divine spear like lightning and flew towards Zichen. In Zichen's hand, the stone saber slashed down. The power of yin and yang surrounded the saber. When the saber and the spear met, the energy was violent. The divine spear flew backward, and Zichen's body slid backward. "You can't kill me at all. If you continue to fight, you will definitely exhaust yourself too much and die." Sami reached out and took the divine spear. He said coldly, "Because this is my home ground." "Is that so?" Zichen snorted. The power of yin and yang gathered in midair and turned into a yin-yang diagram again. The yin-yang diagram began to rotate. At the position of the yin-yang eye, a straight beam of light shot out. The hall began to tremble. The power of laws gathered in midair and formed a huge light shield, blocking the two beams of light. If you want to compete with me in consumption, you will be the one to die in the end. Sami stared at Zichen, his eyes full of coldness. Zichen was in the hall and could not absorb the energy of the outside world. If the battle continued, the situation would naturally be the same as Sami said. But he obviously would not let the battle go on so boring. If this was his mission, then he would try his best to complete it. Because if he could not complete it, he would die. The yin-yang diagram was still in a stalemate with the power of laws in the hall. Zichen rushed forward with the stone saber in his hand. In an instant, time stop was activated, and Zichen came in front of Sami. Die. In Sami's hand, the divine spear stabbed out and directly pierced through Zichen's chest. Zichen's expression did not change. He grabbed the long spear with one hand and stabbed the stone saber in his other hand at the opponent's chest. This was a life for a life. It was a move that Zichen was very good at, but he had not used it for a long time. You're crazy. The stone saber pierced through his body, and blood flowed out of the corner of his mouth. Sami looked at Zichen in shock. Of course not. Blood also flowed out of the corner of Zichen's mouth, but unlike the shock on Sami's face, Zichen was smiling. Because the one who will die will be you. Boom. Energy vibrated, and Sami pulled out the divine spear and stepped back. Blood splashed out from Zichen's chest. In his world, hundreds of mountains exploded, and a huge green space instantly turned into a desert. Swish. Zichen did not care about his injuries at all and rushed forward again. It was still a life for a life move. He was hit by Sami's attack first, and then the stone saber accurately pierced into Sami's body. After several life-risking moves in a row, Sami's face was full of horror. You're crazy, Zichen, you must be crazy. Puff. The stone saber in Zichen's hand pierced through Sami's body again. Sami's aura had become weak, but Zichen's vitality was still exuberant. It seems that you are really not the master of this place. A cold smile appeared on the corners of Zichen's mouth as killing intent flashed in his eyes. With a loud bang, Sami coughed up blood and flew backward. The light shield of the laws that was resisting the yin-yang diagram suddenly exploded, and then two straight rays of light fell on Sami. Two more bloody holes appeared on Sami's body. From this point alone, it could be seen that he was much stronger than the other celestial gods. However, his strength was limited after all. The final winner of this battle was still Zichen. Zichen raised his head and saw that a crack had appeared in the hall. The crack was quickly spreading and soon covered the hall. The wind of annihilation squeezed in from the enlarged crack and filled the surroundings. It's over. Seeing this scene, Sami was desperate. It's time to end this. Zichen's cold voice echoed in Sami's ears. Sami mobilized the power of laws. But in the next moment, all his movements disappeared. Time freeze. The hall had been cracked, and Sami could no longer mobilize the power of the hall. In this way, he was a celestial god who was slightly stronger than the other celestial gods. Naturally, he could not resist Zichen's time freeze. Puff. Chapter 3240. Sami, once the number one celestial god, had been easily beheaded by Zichen. His surging vitality was being destroyed by the heaven-defying power. He was dead. There was no surprise. More and more cracks appeared around the palace. More annihilation wind appeared, enveloping the entire palace. Where the annihilation wind appeared, the annihilation beast could also reach it. A gust of wind spun and turned into the annihilation beast. The annihilation beast's name was Tianfeng. His not Stu. Zichen said with certainty after Tianfeng appeared. Like him, Stu had a complete world. Sami was strong, but he couldn't use the power of a complete world to fight. Tianfeng's body scattered, turning into countless gusts of annihilation wind. They spread out in all directions, destroying the entire palace. This was the core palace. It was equivalent to the energy source of Zichen's world. Once it was destroyed, everything would end. As a heaven-defying cultivator, this palace was the heaven-defying palace he had to destroy. At this moment, Zichen's heart was filled with nervousness and anxiety. He even felt a bit uneasy. As for why he felt uneasy, it wasn't because he was afraid of Stu. It was because he was afraid of the future. "Master, I found it." Tianfeng's voice sounded in Zichen's mind. Zichen turned his head and looked in a certain direction. Countless spaces appeared in the destroyed hall. The moment they appeared, they were immediately destroyed by the annihilation heavenly wind. All the spaces were destroyed. At the end of each space, a person appeared. He was surrounded by dazzling divine light. Even heaven and earth couldn't hide the light. He was sitting cross-legged with his eyes closed. His face was flawless, like the most perfect man in the world. Zichen stood across from him, his expression cold. He'd never seen him before, but he knew that he had to be Stu. At this moment, Stu opened his eyes. Divine light flowed through them. He saw Zichen. His eyes were filled with surprise and emotion. "I didn't think you'd actually succeed." This sentence was obviously not directed at Zichen. The you he was referring to was the already dead thunder god. "Heaven-defying one, what is your name?" Stu opened his mouth again. "This time, you're asking." "Zichen." Zichen said. Saitu said, "When Lei Tianxia set this trap, I was sure he would not succeed." "Do you know why?" Zichen shook his head. "Lei Tianxia should be the god of thunder's original name. Because I'm still alive. How could the schemes of a dead person affect a living person like me?" Stu laughed complacently. "It turns out that I was right. Even if his successor had the blessing of time and fate and could often avert danger, there would always be a time when they would die. However, your appearance is indeed a surprise to me. I didn't expect that you could still reach such heights despite all the dangers. Even Sammy couldn't beat you." Then, Saitu stopped smiling. He looked at Tianfeng and said, "It's all because of that bastard. If it wasn't for him, we wouldn't be in so much trouble. That damnable Lei Tianxia, he already knew that I wouldn't be able to do anything to this beast with an incomplete soul, so he sealed half of its soul when he set up a backup plan, making my god-binding rope unable to do anything to it." Zichen already knew what happened next. Sammy had set him up. It would be great if he died. If he didn't die, Sammy's guess would be normal. Now, it seemed that it was Stu's guess. He was controlling the situation from behind. Tianfeng didn't kill Zichen, and Tianfeng's soul was intact. However, the god-binding rope came in handy. "We have two plans," Stu said. "One is that you, the heaven-defying one, died. The law fragments you left behind are enough for me to stabilize the world and slowly recover. The second is that you didn't die, but the god-binding rope can deal with that bastard. If I kill him, I can also recover. However, I didn't expect that you had that damn knife in the stone. Not only did you destroy the god-binding rope, but you also killed Sammy." Zichen, who had been silent, said, "Are these your last words?" "Last words?" Stu laughed. "That's funny. Do you think you can kill me just because you killed Sammy? In my eyes, you're not even a little kid. How can you fight me?" Zichen said coldly, "With power, of course." Yin and yang energy rose into the air, forming a yin-yang diagram that floated in the air. Looking at the diagram, Stu laughed. "The power of yin and yang is one. This is impressive and surprising. Compared to Lei Tianxia's world, it seems that my world has less changes, but it doesn't matter. After swallowing his world, I'll naturally become stronger." Stu, who had been sitting cross-legged, stood up now. The space started to tremble as if it couldn't bear his power. His aura suddenly erupted, and a storm appeared out of nowhere in the surroundings. The storm was filled with terrifying divine power. The divine power spread out, but when it landed, it was torn apart by the Tianfeng. Right now, the storm could only circle around Stu. It couldn't go far. Clearly, the Tianfeng could still control him. "If I could predict your appearance, how could I not have a backup plan? How childish." In the sky, a ray of divine light appeared in the devastating Tianfeng. The divine light grew brighter and brighter. It passed through the Tianfeng and arrived at this space. It was a large palace. Divine light curled around it, and its aura was vast. The instant he saw the palace, Zichen smiled. This is your backup plan. On the Tianwu continent, the war had already erupted. When Zichen left, he left the Lightning Divine Hall behind. That was because there were countless experts in the Lightning Divine Hall. Now, those experts had all appeared and participated in the war against the god race. As for the Lightning Divine Hall, it floated in the sky. Lightning flashed on its surface. No one dared to approach it. The battle continued. The invading god race experts died one after another. Suddenly, the Lightning Divine Hall floating in the sky trembled. A terrifying aura spread out. The sky began to collapse, and a large black hole appeared. Such a change attracted the attention of the surrounding people. There was a short pause in the battle. Everyone looked at the Lightning Divine Hall that had suddenly changed. The Lightning Divine Hall flew into the black hole, disappearing without a trace. At this moment, the experts that had appeared from the Lightning Divine Hall looked at each other. The Lightning Divine Hall actually left. Swish! The white-clothed Su Mengyaro appeared. She looked at the departing Lightning Divine Hall like a fairy. Sister, why did the Lightning Divine Hall leave? Lin Shui, who was wearing a green dress, came in front of Su Mengyaro. Within Su Mengyao's beautiful eyes, there was a mysterious light circulating, as though she was divining something. A moment later, Monk and the rest also arrived. Seeing the departure of the Lightning Divine Hall, they were puzzled. It's Zichen. Su Mengyaro retracted the light in her eyes and said, I can faintly see some fragments. The departure of the Lightning Divine Hall seemed to have been summoned by Zichen. Nothing will happen, right? Probably not. Su Mengyaro shook her head. Actually, in her divining, Zichen's future was blank. If this is your backup plan, then I have one too. Or rather, that person left a backup plan for me. Zichen looked at Sai-Tu and smiled. Then, above his head, a strong light appeared within the sky wind of obliteration. The strong light descended. It was the Lightning Divine Hall. Originally, he couldn't sense the Lightning Divine Hall. However, after the hall was destroyed and he entered this space, he could sense the Lightning Divine Hall in his soul. Therefore, with a thought, the Lightning Divine Hall arrived. The Lightning Divine Hall versus Sai-Tu's Hall. Zichen versus Sai-Tu. The sky wind assisted from the side, and the strong light from the yin-yang diagram would occasionally descend. This battle was world-shaking and destructive. Unfortunately, no one could see it. This was a battle that concerned the future of the Lifestar, and also concerned Zichen's identity as a heaven-defying person. You will never be able to defy the heavens. Sai-Tu's final words came. Facing the continuous attacks, his body and the hall exploded at the same time, turning into countless specks of light that scattered in all directions. At the same time, those specks of light were shattered by the sky wind of obliteration. Everything turned into nothingness. Zichen looked at the hall and the place where Sai-Tu had disappeared, his eyes filled with confusion about the future. Chapter 32:41. Stu's voice disappeared. Zichen stood in the void in a daze. Tian Feng stood beside him. Specks of light fell from the Lightning Divine Temple, maintaining the stability of this space. This world had collapsed, the temple had disappeared, and Stu was dead. If this was the heavens he wanted to defy, then he had already done it. His mission was complete. After a long time, Zichen finally came to his senses. He suddenly felt a sense of release. His fate changed when he was ambushed by Zhao Kan. After that, he walked on a different path. In the past, he didn't know what kind of path it was. Later, he found out. That was a heaven-defying path. On this heaven-defying path, he walked very quickly. He constantly encountered various dangers and rarely had time to calm down. He didn't need to cultivate and could spend time with his loved ones. It wasn't that he didn't have time, but it was very little. Although he seemed to be free, he still felt pressure in his heart. But now, everything was over. He had become the strongest person in this world. He didn't have any burden and could completely calm down. From now on, he could do whatever he wanted. At this moment, he was very relaxed. He closed his eyes slightly. His entire body became empty. He had enough time to bring his loved ones to see the scenery and do whatever he wanted. After a while, he opened his eyes. A smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. This smile was very warm and very bright. Tian Feng was beside him. He used his head to rub against Zi Chen's pants. Zi Chen patted his head and said, "Everything is over. We should go." "Master, where are we going?" Tian Feng asked. Zi Chen said, "Let's go to the land of exile first." Tian Feng nodded and turned back into the sky wind of obliteration. Zi Chen entered the lightning divine temple. The sky wind of obliteration brought the lightning divine temple into the void and went to the area it had destroyed previously. At this moment, Zi Chen could already control the lightning divine temple. His figure flashed and he arrived at the 9th floor of the lightning divine temple. There was the gate of heaven above and the abyss below. A ray of light landed beside Zi Chen. This ray of light was filled with lightning and had a very powerful aura. The spirit of the lightning divine hall greets master. The lightning figure saluted Zi Chen. This was the first time that Zi Chen had seen the true form of the spirit of the lightning divine hall. Even though he had already gained control of the lightning divine hall long ago, he had never seen the true form of the spirit of the lightning divine hall. Zi Chen nodded slightly, then looked up at the sky. There was a heavenly gate there that he had never opened before. "Can I open the gate of heaven there?" Zi Chen asked. The Thunder God Temple Spirit shook his head and said, "I don't know." "What's outside the divine gate?" Zi Chen asked again. "Another world." The Lightning Divine Shrine Spirit said. At this moment, a gust of wind appeared on Zi Chen's body. It was the annihilation wind. The moment the wind of annihilation enveloped his body, he jumped down. That was the abyss. A gust of wind blew past his ears. It was also the heavenly wind of annihilation, but it was unable to land on Zi Chen. At this moment, he was determined to fall into the abyss because Zi Chen wanted to go down to find someone. He wanted to find those seniors who had sacrificed themselves to save him back then. Up till now, he did not know the names of those seniors. He only knew their code names. At that time, he also had a code name, Number 6. After falling vertically, there was finally a moment for him to land. Zi Chen collected all his emotions and quietly looked down. Whoosh! He landed on the ground. The annihilation wind enveloping his body disappeared, and his spiritual sense instantly spread out. He discovered the deep pit, and his figure disappeared. In the next moment, he arrived at the edge of the deep pit. Within the deep pit, there was currently a ball of light floating. The ball of light was very close to the center, and its light was very faint, as if it could dissipate at any moment. Zi Chen's face immediately revealed a hint of surprise. "Senior, I'm here." Of the 5 balls of light from back then, there was only one left. However, within that ball of light, there were 5 soul auras. Clearly, the 5 of them were huddling together to survive. "It's you." Within the ball of light, there was a soul leading it. He was the first to awaken, and after seeing Zi Chen, he was extremely shocked. Although he had not seen Zi Chen's appearance, he sensed his soul aura. "Senior, it's me. I'll take you out of here," Zi Chen said. "Hey, wake up. Number 6 really did it." The voice from before became excited, and then a wave of soul power spread out. The other 4 sleeping souls had also awakened at this moment. When they saw Zi Chen, they were very surprised. "Number 6, it's really Number 6. Haha, Number 6, we guessed that you would succeed. I didn't expect you to really succeed. Yes, we didn't die because we thought that you would succeed. Number 6, you're very good." For a long time, in the eyes of these people, Zi Chen was replaced by Number 6. The 5 of them were very excited, and they were talking one after another. "I was the one who saw that Number 6 was different first, okay? I was the one who saved Number 6. In terms of eyesight, who can compare to me?" Listening to their voices of argument, Zi Chen laughed. The thing he was most worried about did not happen. Everyone was still alive. This was very good. "Seniors, I'll take you out of here now. We'll talk when we get outside," Zi Chen said. All the arguments suddenly stopped at this moment. "Haha, we're going to disappear soon. What's the point of arguing? Yes, so what if he saw it first? Anyway, number 6 has succeeded. Number 6, you've completed your mission. We're really happy for you. Thank you for coming to see us. It proves that our wait was worth it. Zichen's expression changed slightly because he felt that something was wrong. Seniors, I'm here to take you out of here. I'm now able to resist the heavenly wind here. I guarantee that you won't suffer any injuries, Zichen immediately said. Number 6, you've done something that none of us heaven-defying cultivators have ever done. Unfortunately, you don't know much about heaven-defying cultivators, one of them said. What do I need to know? Zichen asked doubtfully. There can only be one heaven-defying cultivator. It's been like this for generations. But, didn't the 6 of us stand together? Asked Zichen. That's because this space separates heaven and earth. We belong outside of heaven and earth, said one of the lights. But now, you're here. Zichen's face changed instantly. He understood. It was because he was here. He was a heaven-defying cultivator who represented the rules of this lifestyle. Although he had been here before, he was very weak at that time. The rules couldn't extend to this place. However, this time, he was so strong that the rules of this world were complete. That was why the rules had come to this world with him. His face paled. He had never thought that it would be like this. No need to be sad. We'll die sooner or later. Before we die, we're already very lucky to be able to wait until you come. Compared to our predecessors, we're already very lucky. Moreover, we're very happy because there won't be any latecomers coming here. The mission of all the heaven-defying cultivators ends with you. The 5 soul lights separated and disappeared in front of Zichen. Chapter 32-42. The 5 heaven-defying practitioners had disappeared. They had existed for who knew how many tens of thousands of years, but they had disappeared in front of Zichen. They left very openly, but Zichen felt very uncomfortable. Because his arrival had directly caused their disappearance, the 5 of them had helped him without asking for anything else. He did not expect that their final meeting would be like this. He regretted coming here. If he had known this would happen, he would have arranged for the Wind of Annihilation to come and provide them with some resources to strengthen their souls so that they could continue living. Actually, this was still unsolvable. Because there could only be one heaven-defying practitioner in this world, unless they never left this place and Zichen never came here. 5 rays of light entered Zichen's body. These were the memories of the heaven-defying practitioners. They were the heaven-defying practitioners' inheritance that Zichen had never obtained before. Immediately after, more than 10 rays of light appeared from the deep pit and entered Zichen's body. Those were the traces of the heaven-defying practitioners' inheritance that Zichen had never seen before. Clearly, the heaven-defying practitioners of every generation would eventually die here. As for the heaven-defying practitioners' inheritance that should have returned to heaven and earth, because of the special environment here, could not return to heaven and earth and remained here. However, these heaven-defying practitioners' inheritances were already useless to Zichen. Because he had already become a heavenly deity. Heavenly deity Zichen, after bowing towards the deep pit, Zichen turned and left. This time, his figure stopped in the air above the abyss. Previously, he had found a cave here. In the depths of the cave, there was a stone door. Outside the stone door, he had picked up the stone blade. However, when he came here again, the cave had disappeared. At the same time, the Wind of Annihilation in the abyss had also disappeared. Zichen was puzzled. Why did the cave disappear? Was it because the rules were complete? Whoosh! His figure appeared on the 9th floor. The lightning god temple spirit was still standing there. Master, do you have any other orders? Seeing Zichen appear, the lightning god temple spirit asked. Zichen shook his head. His figure flashed again and left the lightning god temple. At this moment, the heavenly Wind of Annihilation had already brought the lightning divine palace to the original land of exile. Zichen walked out from it and began to sense the soul of his clone. After a short while, a passageway appeared in front of Zichen, and Heavenbreaker walked out from it. Behind Heavenbreaker were his clone and Li Ari, and behind them were the 9 heavenly gods. Did you succeed? Heaven Breaker asked. Zichen nodded and said, Sammy is dead. What about Stu? Heaven Breaker asked. Stu is dead too. Zichen said. You can kill Stu? Potian sized up Zichen with suspicion. Why not? Zichen explained the course of the battle. It was clear that he wasn't the only one who had killed Stu. The Wind of Annihilation and the Lightning Divine Hall had contributed quite a bit as well. That Stu is very cunning. I hope you really killed him, Heaven Breaker said. We have to go back now. Zichen said, yeah, I have to go back. Zichen opened his world and put away the Lightning Divine Palace. Heaven Breaker tore open the space and brought everyone back to the Life Star. Heaven Breaker led the way for the rest of the journey. Zichen chatted with Pagoda Battle God and the others. Not long after, Heaven Breaker, who was already familiar with the path, opened the barrier of the Life Star. In the current era, perhaps only Potian would have such strength. The Life Star is right in front of us. As Heaven Breaker spoke, everyone walked out of this space and arrived at the Sky Martial continent of the Life Star. As Zichen appeared, the aura of a heavenly god spread out in all directions. As expected, heaven and earth started to shake. It was as if the Life Star had been pierced with countless holes. The power of laws filled the sky, and countless amounts of heaven and earth energy surged in. The entire Life Star appeared to be flourishing. Apart from that, natural laws had also appeared in that world. That's the power of laws. Sensing the appearance of laws, Pagoda Battle God and the others' expressions changed. As heavenly gods, they knew very well what the appearance of laws in this world signified. Next, if the cultivators living on this Life Star were lucky enough and had good comprehension ability, they would not need law crystals to become heavenly gods. The door to becoming a heavenly god was completely open, waiting for the fated to enter. The entire Life Star was changing. Many old people were very clear about this change. This was a rare opportunity. Many people could easily break through their bottlenecks, and some could even easily surpass several levels. At this moment, Zichen was standing on the Sky Martial continent. His aura had merged with the entire world. Everything that happened on the Life Star was clearly sensed by him. All members of the god race quickly returned to the divine world. Otherwise, die. Zichen's voice had merged with the laws, resounding through heaven and earth. Not only did the invading god race hear it clearly, but all the living beings on the Life Star also heard Zichen's voice. It's Zichen. When Tyrant and the others heard this voice, their expressions changed. They could not suppress their ecstasy. At the same time, they raised their heads to look at the sky. Countless laws fell on the Sky Martial continent. Tyrant, who was already a rank 9, sensed something unusual from it. It was as if the fog in front of him had been pushed aside, and he could see further. That place was the heavenly god realm. Tyrant instantly understood. At the same time, many rank 9 experts also sensed this point. Their expressions became incomparably excited. At this moment, they were very close to becoming a heavenly god. Unfortunately, this feeling disappeared in a flash. The violent changes in heaven and earth had already stopped. Although the fog had dispersed, and they could sense the existence of the heavenly god realm, it was not as clear as before. However, there was still some possibility. At this moment, the aura of a heavenly god suddenly appeared. The entire Sky Martial continent was filled with the pressure of a heavenly god. This pressure made everyone feel suffocated. Someone broke through? Tyrant turned around, feeling incredulous. This aura came from a city of trees. It meant that the person who broke through was on their side. Who is it? He broke through so quickly. Everyone was very surprised. At this moment, a figure soared into the sky. Her body surged with the aura of a heavenly god. After seeing that person, everyone's expression changed, and then burst into cheers. That person was Jolena. At the same time, the second aura of a heavenly god appeared. This aura was on the battlefield, not far from Tyrant. Tyrant turned his head. After seeing that person, his expression changed. It was actually Yang Wei. At this moment, Yang Wei's body was surrounded by black light. His entire body was enveloped by the black light. Beside Yang Wei, Xin Lin, Kai Meng, and the others were extremely shocked. Yang Wei had also become a heavenly god. However, his aura had changed greatly. Those who were close to him felt a chill in their hearts. Then, the third and fourth aura of a heavenly god appeared. Chapter 32-43. The last two of the four heavenly deities appeared beside Zi Chen. One was Heavenbreaker, and the other was the Netherworld clone. That's the feeling. Heavenbreaker laughed loudly. His aura continued to surge, and the might of a heavenly god spread in all directions. Pagoda Battle God and the others stood to the side, sensing the change in Heavenbreaker's aura. Their expressions changed, and they felt quite a bit of pressure. After seeing Zi Chen's strength, they knew very well that as heavenly gods, there was naturally a difference between them. And the current Heavenbreaker gave them a feeling that he was so strong that he was undefeatable. On the other side, the clone also broke through. Heavenbreaker once said that when he broke through, the Netherworld clone would break through. Clearly, Heavenbreaker didn't lie to him. This kind of breakthrough was natural, or it could be said that the seal was undone. The Netherworld clone was a special and powerful existence, and it wasn't weaker than Heavenbreaker. Thus, Pagoda Battle God and the others felt that the Netherworld clone was also a great threat to them. Zi Chen should have been happy about the Netherworld clone's breakthrough, but his current expression was one of indescribable sadness. He turned around, and a person appeared behind him. It was Shadowless. "You're leaving too?" Zi Chen looked at Shadowless. Shadowless was also a heaven-defying, but other than him, no one could see it. But now, Shadowless appeared in its true form. Li Ari saw Shadowless, Heavenbreaker also saw Shadowless, and Pagoda Battle God and the others also clearly saw Shadowless. On the other side, Su Mengyaro and the others who followed the fluctuations also clearly saw him. Shadowless nodded and said, "In the end, we still have to part." Shadowless gave Zi Chen a lot of help along the way. If it wasn't for Shadowless silently helping him, Zi Chen's path ahead would be much more difficult. Zi Chen looked at Shadowless. At this moment, Shadowless was dissipating. He had many things to say to Shadowless, but he didn't know what to say. "It's fate that brought us together. I've been very happy along the way. I've witnessed your rise, and you've completed the mission that no heaven-defying cultivator could complete. Zi Chen, you're amazing." Shadowless' body slowly disappeared. He turned around and cupped his fist at the people in the distance. "Everyone, although you can't see me normally, I can see all of you. I'm very lucky to have met all of you. If there's a reincarnation, I'm willing to be friends with all of you. Goodbye." After that, Shadowless' body disappeared and a ray of light entered Zi Chen's body. As the light entered, a strong light suddenly erupted from Zi Chen's body. The light shot straight into the sky and didn't dissipate for a long time. At the same time, the world started to tremble again. An enormous vortex appeared in the sky, and an object flew out from the vortex. It was an imprint that seemed to be a fragment. It fell from the sky and entered Zi Chen's mind. Wang. The fragment entered his mind and fused with his soul. Thunder Blade Manipulation. This was the Thunder Blade manipulation that Zi Chen had mastered before, but this was the complete version. This was left for heaven-defying cultivators by Thunder. As long as they reached a certain level, it would automatically activate. Regardless of whether the heaven-defying cultivator had mastered the power of Thunder, they could activate the Thunder Blade manipulation because it contained a part of their soul. They didn't need to deliberately comprehend it to use it. Zi Chen stretched out his palm, and the power of thunder flowed in his palm. In the next moment, a long saber appeared in the thunder. It was a stone saber. The power of thunder enveloped the stone saber, and the stone saber shrank visibly. Potian, who had become a divine realm expert, became very excited when he saw this. It was as if he saw the scene of his master killing everyone with a thought. The stone saber turned into a small flying dagger and was caught by Zi Chen. Thunder Blade Manipulation. In the next moment, the flying dagger left his hand and flew into the distance. The surface of the flying dagger was surrounded by the light of thunder. The four auras of the divine realm experts were very powerful and suffocating. However, unlike the other three auras, they disappeared quickly after the breakthrough. Qi Wei's aura became even more tyrannical. Qi Wei's eyes were cold, and a chilling killing intent appeared around him. "Qi Wei, how are you?" Xin Lin shouted from the side. Bang! Qi Wei turned around and glanced at Xin Lin, who was sent flying backward. A glance from a divine realm expert could shatter heaven and earth. The place where Xin Lin was originally standing had been destroyed and turned into a black hole. The destructive aura was raging constantly. In the distance, Xin Lin was terrified. She had almost died. Kill. Qi Wei's aura became more and more tyrannical. His eyes were full of killing intent, but he was also struggling. "Leave quickly." In the next moment, a low and hoarse voice sounded. It was Qi Wei, and he seemed to be in great pain. His body was surrounded by light as if he was fighting against something. "Everyone must die. Die, all of you must die." But soon, the pain turned into madness. The aura around him became violent, and the surrounding heaven and earth collapsed instantly. The others in the distance had already retreated far away when they saw that the situation was not good. The Divine Realm experts who were fighting with Qi Wei had already fled to the horizon. Jolena appeared not far away, and the power of the Divine Realm enveloped her. She looked at Qi Wei and raised her eyebrows. "Die, everyone must die." Qi Wei seemed to have lost his mind. He flew into the distance, and everything in his path was destroyed. At this moment, a ray of light appeared in the sky. The ray of light cut through the sky and came in front of Qi Wei. Puff! The ray of light entered Qi Wei's body and penetrated it instantly. Bolts of lightning immediately appeared within the black light that surrounded Wavering's body. The lightning wreaked havoc around his body, causing his body to tremble. The madness in his eyes had weakened a little. The lightning that flew over flashed and disappeared. Qi Wei's face showed that he was struggling again. His eyes were cold again, and the killing intent on his body was almost tangible. Whoosh! The lightning came again. Many people could not see what was in the lightning. In short, it penetrated Qi Wei's body and disappeared into the distance. The stone knife that turned into a flying knife returned to Zi Chen's side. Zi Chen looked into the distance, where Qi Wei was raging. "Still not working?" Zi Chen frowned slightly. The power of the thunder body was injected into the stone knife. In the next moment, the stone knife flew out. Thunder knife manipulation. The stone knife broke through the air and hit Qi Wei. The power of the thunder body contained began to destroy the black light on Qi Wei's body. Qi Wei screamed, and his voice was full of pain. The stone knife flew back. Once again, it flew out with the power of the thunder body. Puff, puff, puff. Under everyone's stupefied gazes, Jiao Wei's body was pierced by lightning more than a dozen times. Even though he was already a heavenly god, he was still unable to dodge these attacks. The terrifying black light that surrounded his body gradually dissipated. Qi Wei's expression slowly returned to normal. After a while, he opened his eyes and looked into the distance. His eyes were clear, and his eyes were full of gratitude. At this moment, he was still a divine realm expert. That power was completely suppressed by him, or rather, refined by him. Chapter 3244. Sandro was known as the #1 heavenly god in the god world. His status was extremely high, so it was natural that everyone knew about him. Now that a heavenly god had appeared on a life star, the god race no longer had the heart to resist. They all fled back to the god world. The chaos in the god world was still ongoing. Everyone was in a state of panic. Divine mountains could erupt at any time, producing destructive power. Sometimes, cities would suddenly split open, and countless destructive powers would emerge. The chaotic god world was no longer suitable for living. If the god race had attacked the life stars because they obeyed the orders of the heavenly gods, then now that the god world had become like this, they would attack the life stars again for themselves. Given the current situation of the god world, it would not be long before it was completely destroyed. The news of the god race retreating from the life stars quickly spread to Sandro and the other heavenly gods. When they heard the name Zi Chen, they reflexively became nervous. It should be noted that when they were all at level 9, Zi Chen could kill 9 of them with one slash. This situation had persisted until they became heavenly gods. Zi Chen could no longer stay in the God world because of this matter, so he had chosen to leave. As for where he had gone, no one knew. However, the other heavenly gods felt that Sandro might know. Now that Zi Chen had returned and asked to see Sandro, while the other heavenly gods were nervous, they also secretly sighed in relief. After all, everyone knew that there was enmity between the two of them. If Zi Chen wanted to take revenge, he should be looking for Sandro. Looking at the 8 heavenly gods whose expressions did not change, but whose minds were filled with many thoughts, Sandro coldly snorted and said, "Isn't it just becoming a heavenly god? What is there to be proud of? We are all under the control of the laws of heaven and earth. How strong can he be?" The other heavenly gods were silent. This was because, in the past, when they were under the control of the laws of heaven and earth, the difference in combat power between them and Zi Chen was like heaven and earth. Seeing that the other heavenly gods were silent, Sandro continued, "Zi Chen has returned at this time of the chaos in the god world. Perhaps he knows the reason. Everyone, who is willing to go with me to the life stars to investigate?" The 8 Empyrean gods looked around. Some were deep in thought, some were looking up, and some were looking elsewhere. It was as if they hadn't heard what Sandro had said. They knew clearly what had happened on the life star. Zi Chen wasn't the only god realm expert there. Many more had appeared. One of the heavenly gods went berserk, but in the end, Zi Chen resolved the crisis with a few moves. Under such circumstances, who would dare to go? "Alright, since that's the case, I'll have to trouble all of you to hold down the fort in the celestial realm while I go meet that brat Zi Chen," Sandro said coldly. The other Empyrean gods all looked at Sandro, wishing him luck, and then said some useless words of consolation before all leaving. Seeing them leave, Sandro coldly harumphed as a smile appeared on his face. It was true that he and Zi Chen were enemies, but there was a little bit of friendship between the two of them. At the very least, when Zi Chen left, he didn't have the intention to kill him. This was already considered friendship. After staying in the god world for a day, Zenith stepped into the teleportation formation to the life star. In the sky above the life star, a spatial passage opened, and Zenith appeared. As soon as he appeared, over a dozen figures appeared around him. Their speed was so fast that it caused him to be shocked. These were all rank 9 Empyrean gods. Their battle prowess far surpassed rank 9 Empyrean gods. They coldly stared at Zenith. "I'm here to see Lord Zi Chen," Zenith said. He was very clear about Zi Chen's characteristics and how powerful he was. As soon as he arrived, the other party could sense his presence. "Lord Empyrean God, long time no see." Zi Chen's laughter rang out. At the same time, a passage appeared in front of Zenith. "Lord Zi Chen is too polite. You can call me Zenith or Little Mountain. Don't call me Lord." Zenith hurriedly smiled obsequiously and walked into the passage. The rank 9 Empyrean gods watched the passage disappear with strange expressions. As far as they knew, Zenith was the number 1 Empyrean god of the god world. He was extremely arrogant. It was said that the god race's invasion of the life star was decided by him. They didn't expect that the number 1 Empyrean god would have such an attitude towards Lord Zi Chen. At the other end of the passage was a great hall of trees in the City of Trees. Zi Chen was standing there, smiling as he watched Zenith walk in. Zenith immediately clasped his fists and said, "Little Zenith greets Lord Zi Chen. It's been tens of thousands of years since we last met. Little Zenith has been thinking about Lord Zi Chen day and night." Zi Chen said with a faint smile, "Is that so? I didn't expect that I would be so important in your heart." Of course, Lord Zi Chen has always been Lord in little Zenith's heart. This is something that will never change, Sanderson hurriedly said. Zi Chen waved his hand and said, "There's no need to be so polite. I have something to ask you." "Please tell me, Lord," Zenith said respectfully. "This attack on the Life Star was arranged by you, wasn't it?" Zi Chen asked. Zenith's expression changed rapidly. He didn't expect that Zi Chen would ask this question right from the start. "Tell me the truth," Zi Chen said. "You should know the consequences of lying to me." Zi Chen's attitude towards Zenith was the same as when he was still a divine king. This made the last bit of hope in Zenith's heart disappear. From his attitude, It could be seen that the gap between him and Zi Chen was the same as when he was still a divine king. "It was my order," Zenith said. "Then whose order did you listen to?" Zi Chen asked again. Zenith's expression changed again. He looked at Zi Chen in confusion and asked, "What do you mean, Lord?" Zi Chen smiled coldly and said, "Zenith, it seems like you still have some tricks up your sleeve. Let me ask you. Was it Sammy who gave you the order?" "You know Lord Sammy?" Zenith was startled. Zi Chen snorted and said, "Not only do I know him, but I also killed him." "What?" Zenith's face changed dramatically. This time, he was truly shocked. "How's the situation in the divine world?" Zi Chen asked. "The divine world? The divine world is in chaos. I don't know what happened." Zenith told him about the recent changes in the divine world. There was nothing he could hide. "So the divine world hasn't been destroyed yet?" Zi Chen frowned slightly. Zenith was startled. He didn't know what he meant. "Is it because you're still alive?" Zi Chen looked at Zenith. Zenith's face paled. He said with a sad face, "Lord, what do you mean?" Zi Chen waved his hand and said, "Forget it. It doesn't matter if you're still alive. They're already dead. You can't cause any big waves." Zi Chen casually asked Zenith a few more questions. Finally, he asked, "What do you plan to do next?" "The divine world will follow your lead, Lord." Chapter 32:45. The fact that Sandro had returned to the god realm alive surprised the other Empyrean gods, but they also heaved a sigh of relief. Sandro and Zi Chen had a big grudge against each other. If he could come back alive, they believed that Zi Chen wouldn't do anything to them. However, for safety's sake, they still went to Sandro's place to ask for some information. Seeing these guys, Sandro didn't have a good face. He just said a few perfunctory words to them and then sent them away. At this moment, his mind was in a mess because Zi Chen had said something very important. Sami was dead. As the number one Empyrean god of the god realm, he knew more than the other 8 Empyrean gods, so he knew who Sami was. He was the true number one Empyrean god of the god realm, and also the one who had given them the law crystal. Zi Chen had killed Sami, so the chaos in the god world was obviously related to this. Through his conversation with Zi Chen, he didn't know what the future of the god world would be like. If it was going to be destroyed, would he still want to stay in the god world? At the same time, did it mean that besides Zi Chen, no one else in the world could control him? After all, in the past, he had to listen to Sami's orders. For example, this attack on the Life Star was Sami's order, so he didn't dare to refuse. Just as Sandro was thinking about his future, a voice suddenly came from his room. "Sandro." Along with this voice, a god's aura appeared and covered the room. Sandro was shocked and raised his head to look at the sky. A man was standing there. Looking at the man, Sanderson was greatly shocked and exclaimed, "Lord Sami, you seem surprised to see me." Sami looked at him coldly. Sandro was still surprised. "I saw Zi Chen. He said he killed you, Master. He also asked me to lead the god world to be loyal to him." Sami's eyes were cold. "You agreed?" Sandro smiled bitterly. "If I didn't agree, I wouldn't have been able to come back. Plus, I believed that you weren't dead, so I've been waiting for you." Sami didn't care whether Sandro was telling the truth or not. He said indifferently, "Now, find me some powerful level 9 god kings." "Some?" Sandro looked at Sami in surprise. 300, Sami said. "Remember, I want the strongest." Sandro nodded. "I'll do it now. Remember, keep this a secret. Don't let Zi Chen know about it. Also, you can pretend to join him and do whatever he wants you to do," Sami said. "Yes." Sanderson patted his chest and said, "Don't worry, my lord. I will complete the mission." After Sanderson left, a cold light flashed through Sami's eyes. "Zi Chen, I'll let you live a carefree life for a while longer. Your life has already begun to count down." Not long after, Sanderson arrived with more than 300 level 9 divine kings. Sami led them away. In the deepest part of the void, there was a large hall. It shone with divine light, allowing the space-time turbulence to wash it. Sami turned into a streak of light. Wherever he went, the space-time turbulence would part. He went straight into the hall. A person sat quietly in the hall. If Chen were here, he would definitely recognize that person as Stu, who should have been killed by him. Seeing Sami return, Stu opened his eyes and said, "Is it done?" Sami nodded. "We have enough people. Next, we need to condense law crystals." "Very good. Hurry up. Once everything stabilizes, we'll end this farce." Sami entered another part of the hall. Stu had left a clone there to condense law crystals. Chen, you definitely didn't know that it was the many law fragments you left behind that allowed us to turn the tables, did you? However, due to the laws of this world, you can't go against the heavens. Lei Tianxia is a dead man. How can his schemes work on a living person? Chen's life became leisurely. He had become a celestial god, the ruler of this world. Nothing could affect him now. He no longer felt danger or pressure. He was completely free. The entire martial heaven continent had become a city of trees. At the edge of the world, the roots of the ancient trees were constantly absorbing the power of heaven and earth. This world was still expanding. The factions on the Life Star all lived in the city of trees. The teleportation formations were connected to various places. Chen had already gone against the heavens. It seemed like he was going to open the celestial gate next, but he was still hesitating. He wasn't sure what was behind the celestial gate. Was there an even greater danger? Thus, he decided not to open the celestial gate. He didn't want to be filled with curiosity about the other world. He would live here. He wanted to see the mountains, the rivers, and the scenery with his loved ones. The martial heaven continent had become a continent of war. There was no scenery to see. Thus, Chen didn't stay here for long. He left the martial heaven continent with Su Mengyaro and the others, heading to other continents. This could be considered as a true leisure trip between him and his beloved. He didn't bring anyone. Yi Qian had left the martial heaven continent and returned to her original world. It was said that the pagoda battle celestial god had also gone. After calming down completely, Chen discovered the beauty of the Life Star. There were many races and creatures living here. Lin Shui, Wang Xian and Shangguan Yu were collecting seeds in a sea of flowers. Su Mengyaro and Chen stood together. "What do you plan to do next?" Su Mengyaro asked. Chen was lying in the sea of flowers. He looked up at the sky and said, "Find a beautiful place and live there forever. Live the life we want." "What life?" Su Mengyaro sat beside Chen and looked at the three people in front of her. Chen smiled and said, "Of course it's the happiest life. Only the two of us. No one will disturb us. It's best to live on a small island in the sea." This was the life Chen looked forward to the most. It was just that he didn't have the ability to protect this dream in his heart in the past. Is everything really over? Su Mengyaro lay down beside Chen and looked up at the blue sky. "But why do I always have a feeling that my heart can't calm down?" Chen suddenly thought of Potion's words. He didn't know why, but a shadow gradually rose in his heart. Suddenly, Chen frowned. "What's wrong?" Su Mengyaro turned around and looked at him. "Sander went to the martial heaven continent." Chen got up and said to Su Mengyaro, "Wait for me here. I'll be back soon." Su Mengyaro smiled, and the surrounding flowers instantly lost their color. Swish. Chapter 3246. Sandro. When Chen reappeared, he was next to Sandro on the heaven martial continent. He had teleported across many continents. "Greetings, sir." Sandro clasped his fists, his face respectful. "What's the matter?" Chen looked at Sandro. "Nothing much, I'm just here to ask Lord Chen if there's anything he needs me to do," Sander said. Chen was surprised by Sandro's visit. He smiled. "It's okay. If the god world collapses, remember to find a place for the god clan to live. If you want to come to this Life Star, I can arrange a place for you." Sandro said immediately, "Thank you, sir. The god world has been stabilized." Then, Sandro clasped his fists again. "If you don't have any other orders, Sandro will take his leave." Sandro flashed and left. Chen watched Sandro leave, Zichen reappeared in the sea of flowers. Su Mengyaro turned around to look at him. What's wrong? Nothing. Zichen continued to lie in the sea of flowers, looking at the blue sky. Sometimes, he heard laughter like silver bells echoing from a distance. He closed his eyes, smelling the fragrance of the flowers and enjoying this beautiful moment. After staying in the sea of flowers for several days and collecting enough seeds, the 5 of them left for the next place. The women had discussed that they would travel around the Life Star and visit every place. They wouldn't miss any scenery. Zichen's return had extinguished the flames of war. The Life Star had calmed down, and the principles of heaven and earth had improved. However, besides Ya Wei's team, no one else had broken through. The door to the God realm had opened, but the threshold was too high. Until now, no one had been able to cross it. Becoming a celestial god was not something that could be achieved through cultivation alone. It required an instant of enlightenment. Finally, Tyrant and the others were free. They didn't have to fight, and they couldn't break through. They just gathered to drink and chat, reminiscing the years they had struggled. Everyone's life became very comfortable. The chaotic god world had stabilized, and the principles of heaven and earth had stabilized. All the god clan members, who had been on tenterhooks, heaved a sigh of relief. Sandro stayed in the Sky God Palace. After he had come back from the Life Star, he hadn't left the Sky God Palace. He was waiting for the final chaos to arrive. At that time, it would naturally be time for the dust to settle. Time passed quickly, and in the blink of an eye, 1,000 years had passed. Not leaving the Sky God Manor for 1,000 years, and not even attending the gatherings of the other Sky Gods, made the other 8 Sky Gods think that Sanderson must be afraid of Zichen. After stabilizing, the God realm began to develop at full speed. They didn't know if it was an illusion, but they felt that the energy between heaven and earth seemed to be getting denser and denser. It was even denser than before the chaos. In the heavenly God Manor, Sander looked out the window. It's been 1,000 years. Why hasn't there been any movement? However, at this moment, a voice arose outside the heavenly God Palace. Sir, an invitation from the Life Star is here. Oh! Sandini's eyes flashed with surprise. Bring it in. After reading the invitation, Sander's expression changed. Zichen was going to have a grand wedding. Closing the invitation, he seemed to be thinking about something. Zichen is going to have a grand wedding? In the depths of the void, Stu, who was sitting cross-legged, opened his eyes. A sharp light flashed in his eyes. Yes, the news is absolutely true. Sami, who was standing below, said. How are our people's preparations? Asked Stu. Just a few more to condense. We should be able to make it in time, said Sami. Prepare well. When the time comes, we'll send a big gift to Zichen. Stu's eyes flashed with cold, murderous intent. Zichen's grand wedding came too suddenly, because Zichen, who had been away for 1,000 years, announced it as soon as he came back. Soon, the entire Sky Marshal continent became lively. Zichen's wedding was held in the core city of the Sky Marshal continent. This was a true heavenly god city with several heavenly gods guarding it. This time, Zichen was going to have a grand wedding with the 4 women and goddess Yichen. For a time, news of his deeds spread throughout the Sky Marshal continent. Naturally, there were many touching love stories between them. When Tyrant heard the news, he was happy but also puzzled. I say, why are you in such a hurry? Tyrant asked mysteriously after seeing Zichen. Is it very urgent? Zichen was startled. Shouldn't this kind of thing be done early? Now that everything is quiet, the timing is just right. He had been engaged to Wang Xianer many years ago. He had even done it with Shangguan Yu'er. Mengyaro and Shuer had also waited for him for many years. Now that everything was peaceful, it was naturally time to get married. Tyrant looked around and then said in a low voice, I've never heard you say that you're going to get married this time. Could it be that you're pregnant? Looking at Tyrant's wretched appearance, Zichen instantly understood what he meant. He directly slapped Tyrant. The sky-ceiling domain of the Tree City was nothing to him. With a bang, Tyrant broke through the restriction and flew out. Tyrant's shout came from the horizon and his figure disappeared. What is this fellow thinking all day long? Is he still a monk without any desires? Zichen shook his head and smiled. He raised his head and looked at the sky. The lightning divine hall was floating above the sky martial continent. For something like a grand wedding, as long as Zichen said a word, there would be countless people who would arrange it for him. He didn't need to worry at all. Pagoda Battle Heavenly God and the others returned to the sky martial continent and began to prepare for Zichen's wedding. Ya Wei brought Ben Senlu and the others out of the tree city. It was said that they were going to other continents to find some precious materials to make a ceremonial robe for Zichen. Devil Ape and Longhu also left. Zhong Haotian and LV Peng went to the other side. When Tyrant returned from the horizon, everyone had already left to prepare their gifts. Zichen's wedding naturally had to be grand. Thus, invitations were sent to the divine world. The 9 new heavenly gods all received invitations. They naturally wouldn't refuse. They all felt that this was a rare opportunity to befriend Zichen. Thus, they all brought their gifts and came to the Sky Martial continent. There were still a few days before the wedding, but the core tree city was already filled with guests. The lowest cultivation base of these people was at the 9th rank. The core tree city became unprecedentedly lively. Sandro came to the core tree city. Looking at this incomparably bustling city, he had a different feeling in his heart. At a certain moment, he seemed to see skeletons everywhere and countless wailing resentful spirits. Finally, the time for the wedding had arrived. In the endless void, Sai too left the hall. He took Sammy and tore open the space, heading to the Life Star. Zichen wore a black ceremonial robe made of precious materials in the world. He walked out amidst countless cheers. Su Mengyaro, Yi Qian, Lin Shui, Wang Xian and Shangguan Yu wore different colored feather robes. Their peerless immortal faces were covered by 7 colored veils. These veils were made of real rainbows. They were made by heavenly god Fina. Zichen walked out of the tree palace. Under the gazes of tens of thousands of people, he gently looked at the 5 women. Chapter 32:47. Cheers rang out unceasingly. The entire core city was in an uproar. Sandro stood in the crowd, calmly watching this scene. He had a smile on his face as he sincerely wished Zichen well. Such a scene was rarely seen, or it could be said that it would never happen again. Tyrant, Zhong Haotian, and the others stood on the other side, looking up at Zichen. They were filled with emotion. This day has finally arrived. LV Peng smiled happily. That's right. Zhong Haotian, who had always been cold, also had a smile on his face. He couldn't help but think back to the past. How wonderful. Tyrant looked up at Zichen, smiling foolishly. It was unknown whether or not he was moved. Wuji and Qing Enyu stood side by side. Qing Enyu was nestled in Wuji's embrace. She smiled and said, "This day has finally arrived." Wuji said, "That's right. The responsibilities he shouldered were too heavy. He has finally let go of everything. Next, he will establish his own family." The 4 divine beasts of the past had long since become god kings. The 4 of them stood together, feeling happy for Zichen. Many of Zichen's friends who had fought side by side with him were truly happy for him as they looked at Zichen at this moment. "Although it's a bit hard to bear, I still wish you well, Master Zichen." Zichen's eldest disciple with the extreme yin body, that beautiful girl, was also in the crowd, giving Zichen her blessings. Just as the entire city was cheering and giving their blessings to Zichen and his bride, the martial heaven continent suddenly shook. Following that, the sky lost its color. It was as if night had descended. A pressure descended from the sky, enveloping the martial heaven continent. At this moment, the martial heaven continent lost all its luster. This scene caused everyone's expression to change. They all looked up at the sky. "It's finally here." Sanderson looked up at the sky, his eyes flashing. "What's going on?" Beside him, the other 8 heavenly gods cried out in alarm. At this moment, everyone was looking up at the sky with different expressions. Looking at the descending darkness, Zichen's expression changed. The darkness that had shrouded the world suddenly dissipated, and light once again illuminated the martial heaven continent. A burst of laughter rang out. Chen, why didn't you invite me and my lord to your wedding? Sammy. Hearing this laughter, the expressions of the pagoda battle god and the others changed. Then, they all looked at Chen. It was because Chen had said that Sammy was dead. At this moment, Chen was also quite shocked, as if he were also surprised that Sammy was still alive. Even more people didn't know what was going on, but as experts, they had extremely sharp senses. Unease appeared on their faces. With a bang, the forbidden sky domain shattered. Large swathes of ancient trees withered. In the center of the city, Gyno's boundless vitality instantly dropped to the lowest point. The city that was originally filled with vitality now turned yellow and withered. Two people appeared in the sky. They were Sammy and Stu. You're still alive? Chen looked at the two of them, his shock transforming into killing intent. Sammy stood at the back, clearly following Stu's lead. Stu said, I remember telling you that the schemes of the dead can never compare to the schemes of the living. Furthermore, you will never be able to truly defy the heavens, because the laws of heaven and earth cannot be defied. The majority of the people in the city were bewildered. They didn't know what was going on. Chen indifferently said, since you didn't die last time, I'll just kill you this time. Stu laughed. Chen, you might have misunderstood. This time, we've come to attend your wedding. We're here to give you our blessings. Of course, we've also brought gifts. After saying that, Stu glanced at Sammy. Sammy nodded and waved his sleeve. One ray of light after another appeared. Those rays of light transformed into figures with powerful auras. Sensing the auras of these people, the countenances of everyone in the core city changed drastically, and cries of surprise rang out continuously. These people were all celestial gods. There were over 300 of them. What do you think of this gift? Stu smiled and said, this is all thanks to you. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have been able to gather so many celestial gods in such a short time. He looked at Chen and continued, are you satisfied with this gift? Chen was silent. The killing intent in his eyes didn't diminish. Stu smiled and said, I heard that there's a custom in your world. After a wedding, you have to enter the bridal chamber together. Since we've come with sincerity, I think it's better for my people to enter the bridal chamber instead of you. Chen narrowed his eyes. Suddenly, wind appeared from all directions. It tore the space apart and flew toward those celestial gods. Petty tricks. Stu snorted coldly. He reached out and grabbed at the void. The void shattered instantly. A gust of wind appeared out of nowhere. Stu grabbed the gust of wind. The gust of wind turned into a strange beast. It was Tianfeng. Stu looked at Tianfeng and said coldly, idiot, your soul is complete. You can't wander outside the rules anymore. Do you think you're still my match? My real body has already appeared. Instead of running away obediently, you're sending yourself to death. I'll fulfill your wish. Stu exerted force with his right hand. With a boom, Tianfeng's body exploded. It turned into countless gusts of wind and disappeared in the end. The powerful annihilating Tianfeng was killed by Stu just like that. The 9 celestial gods knew how terrifying Tianfeng was the most. They didn't expect Stu to kill Tianfeng with one move. Chen's expression grew serious. The moment Stu killed Tianfeng, he felt Stu's power. It was a power that he couldn't defeat at all. Stu looked at Chen and said, I already said that I'm here to watch the ceremony. It seems like you don't appreciate it at all. In that case, don't blame me for being rude. Die. Chen attacked first. He charged toward Stu. Boom. A loud explosion reverberated in the sky. Stu's body was blown backward. Chen flashed and chased after him. The void quieted down instantly. Time stopped. After another strike, Stu was sent flying out of the continent. A battle of life and death. I'll wait for you outside. Stu flew away. Chen turned around to look at the others. At this moment, they were all looking at him worriedly. Chen didn't say anything because he didn't know what to say. After feeling Stu's power, he knew that he wouldn't be able to survive this time. He left, not leaving behind a single word, leaving behind these several hundred heavenly deities as well. No one knew if this departure would be a permanent farewell or not. No one knew that this was the biggest crisis in the history of this lifestar. What should we do? Chapter 32:48. As the ruler of this world, Chen left without saying a word. There were more than 300 opposing heavenly gods, while Chen only had a dozen or so heavenly gods. The disparity between the two sides was too great. However, their leader didn't give any indication. The 8 heavenly gods all looked at Sandro. They were used to letting the number 1 heavenly god make the decision. They didn't dare to provoke Sami, and they didn't want to become enemies with the powerful Chen. Sandro looked at the sky and frowned. Let's wait and see. The 8 heavenly gods naturally didn't have any objections. If they could choose to be neutral, they would never choose a side. Chen's side was like a dragon without a leader because of Chen's departure. Pagoda Battle and the others didn't know what to do, so they stood there without moving. Fina looked at Heaven Breaker and asked, "What do we do?" Heaven Breaker said indifferently, "Since it has come to this, we can only kill." He then turned around and looked at the god kings below. This is a battle between heavenly gods. You have to try your best to survive. Quickly leave this place, Rocky said to Shin Lin and the others. Then he flew up and stood together with Fina and Heaven Breaker. Sami looked at the 3 people who were in a battle stance and said mockingly, "There are only 3 of you. How can you fight against 300 of us? Do you think you can fight against 100 of us?" Then Sami looked at Sandro and said, "Sandro, do you know what to do?" "Sandro will follow Lord's lead." Sandro, who was still hesitating, immediately bowed. The other 8 heavenly gods did the same. Chen had left the Tianwu continent, and they didn't know whether he was alive or dead. Sami's side had the absolute advantage. If they had to make a choice, they naturally knew what to choose. Sami nodded with satisfaction. Then he said, "Pagoda Battle, what about you?" Pagoda Battle and the others didn't reply. They seemed to be hesitating. Sami's gaze fell on the god race below. He said, "All god race members, leave. You can live today." In the city, many god race members looked at each other. Looking at them who did not move, Sami frowned. "Why? Do you all want to die?" At this moment, a voice suddenly came from the sky, "Everyone, there's no need to worry. Quickly leave this place." This voice came from Chen, and immediately caused a burst of cheers. But soon, everyone noticed that the Chen who appeared in the air was clearly different from the one who had left. Black light swirled around this Chen. Compared to the previous Chen, he was less gentle and more callous. "Let us fight to the death." A black python rushed out from the Netherworld clone's body. The python swooped down with its mouth wide open. A black hole appeared from the python's mouth. It was like an abyss, aiming to devour the heavenly deities below. Many heavenly gods also acted immediately. One after another, attacks imbued with the power of laws shot toward the python. Energy roared in the sky. The stable space crumbled in an instant. Waves of energy fell from the sky, annihilating large swathes of ancient trees. Many rank 9s also died in the aftermath. Just the shockwaves from the explosion had such destructive power. To the life forms of the Martial Heaven continent, today was a disaster. The Netherworld clone opened the curtains to the battle. Heaven Breaker transformed into a bow, and in the next moment, the heaven-piercing divine needle appeared. Heaven Breaker's own energy gathered toward the heaven-piercing divine needle. The bow became incomparably dazzling as it was pulled into a full moon. Buzz! With a light tremble, a ripple surged out. Everywhere it passed, the high-rise treehouses were turned into powder and disappeared. The heaven-piercing divine needle turned into a rainbow light and pierced through the body of a heavenly god. Fart! Blood sprayed everywhere. The heavenly god whose body had been pierced by the arrow lowered his head to look at his pierced chest. A trace of confusion appeared in his eyes. Then, he fell to the ground. He was dead. Heaven Breaker had killed a heavenly god with a single arrow. Buzz! Next, a second arrow was shot. The arrow transformed into a rainbow that tore through space, piercing through the defenses of a second heavenly god and piercing through his body. A second heavenly god had died. Black light swirled around Heavenbreaker's body as he charged at the approaching heavenly god. The energy that he had already completely controlled transformed into a saber in his hand. He slashed it down. Whoosh! The saber slashed through, and the heavenly god's body was sliced in half. The black energy enveloped the heavenly god and destroyed his life force. Anguished cries reverberated before gradually fading away. Boom! At the same time, Heavenbreaker was also sent flying by a beam of energy. There were over 300 heavenly gods present, and each of them unleashed over 300 attacks. How could it be easy to dodge all of them? While the heavenly gods were battling in the sky, the city below was also in chaos. Everyone was fleeing in panic. In this kind of battle between heavenly gods, just the shockwaves from the battle were enough to destroy them. They couldn't interfere at all. They could only flee as quickly as possible. After killing 4 heavenly gods, Heavenbreaker transformed back into his original body. He turned to look at Fina, who was battling enemies not far away, and said, "Fina, it's up to you now." Fina retreated. Several dozen attacks that were imbued with heavenly god nomological powers landed in front of her. The void shattered as violent energy scattered in all directions. The retreating Fina extended her jade-like left hand. Heavenbreaker transformed back into a longbow and flew toward Fina. Fina gripped the longbow and retreated at an extremely fast speed. As she retreated, she drew the longbow. The essence of heaven and earth converged toward the longbow. At the same time, the nomological powers within Fina's body were also continuously injected into the longbow. One attack after another chased after Fina. As Fina was evading, she released an arrow. The arrow pierced through the sky and pierced through the body of a heavenly god. This heavenly god was dead as expected. Whoosh! 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 Several dozen heavenly gods flew toward Fina at an extremely fast speed. Like streaks of rainbow light, they chased after Fina. Fina retreated while gathering energy to unleash more arrows. Heavenbreaker had expended an enormous amount of energy shooting 4 arrows earlier, so he passed them on to Fina. Fina also expended an enormous amount of energy shooting arrow after arrow. However, each of her arrows was able to successfully kill a heavenly god. However, compared to the hundreds of heavenly gods, the ones that died were nothing. Despite the enormous expenditure, Fina's expression didn't change at all. In the next instant, her aura surged again, as if she had swallowed a divine pill and instantly recovered her energy. In reality, it was extremely difficult for a heavenly god to recover after expending an enormous amount of energy. Fina's instant recovery was accompanied by the deaths of countless God-King-level beings. Their energy was converted by the Mother Nest's special secret technique and replenished to Fina. Arrow after arrow, each of them capable of killing. However, there were simply too many enemies. With the absolute advantage, Fina was unable to dodge all of the attacks. Pu. She was struck by a divine palm and was sent flying. She started coughing up blood. What should we do? The battle had already erupted. 8 of the 9 newly ascended heavenly gods of the god realm were looking at Sandro. Sanderson frowned. Based on the current situation, if they stepped forward, only death would await them. However, if they didn't fight, would Sami let them go? At this moment, Sami was standing in the air, looking down at the battlefield indifferently. These heavenly gods being so useless was within his expectations. This was because they had existed for no more than 1,000 years at most. Even though they had the strength of a heavenly god, they had only been heavenly gods for a short time and had yet to condense a heavenly god bone. In such a battle, it was inevitable that they would be at a disadvantage. Chapter 3249. Sandro and the others had been Empyrean gods for tens of thousands of years and had long since condensed Empyrean god bones. They were true Empyrean gods, and their battle prowess far surpassed those who had just become Empyrean gods. Seeing that they hadn't moved, Sami grew angry. When he heard Sami's words, Sandro's expression changed. His face darkened and became extremely unsightly. In this situation, there was no need for him to act. Sami's side had the absolute advantage, and Zichen's side had no chance of turning the tables. But Sami still wanted them to act. Clearly, he was determined to see what Sandro's stance was. It seemed that there was no need to hesitate any longer. Sandro retracted his gaze from the sky. Zichen probably wasn't coming back. All of his hesitation vanished, and a cold light flashed through his eyes. Just as he gave the order to attack, streaks of light appeared in front of him. Pagoda Battle and the others had blocked his path. They were Empyrean gods, and when Sandro saw them, he couldn't help but feel his heart tighten. In terms of strength, the difference between the two sides wasn't that great. They could definitely fight it out. This was a fear that had settled in the depths of their hearts over countless years, and it was difficult to change it in a short time. Pagoda Battle, what are you doing? Sami saw what was happening below and angrily called out. These guys are with Zichen. We have to stop them. Before Pagoda Battle could reply, Lianye took the initiative to speak, her eyes cold. Sandro was startled, and the 8 Empyrean gods behind him were dumbfounded. Lianye, you're lying. One of the Empyrean gods angrily rebuked. You're with Zichen. We're with His Excellency. How dare you quibble? Lianye snorted coldly and attacked. As she attacked, Shibei and the others also attacked without hesitation. Lord Sami, don't worry. We'll stop them. We won't let these treacherous bastards help Zichen. Lianye spoke as she fought, her words seeming righteous. Her opponent was so angry that he howled. Sami was well aware of Lydia's intentions, but he didn't point it out. In this situation, they had the absolute advantage, so there was no need to force them. If they changed sides, it would be troublesome. Sami didn't care that the heavenly gods kept dying. If they won this battle, Lord Stu would be able to create more heavenly gods. In midair, monstrous energy surged. The Netherworld clone's body disappeared and was replaced by a huge beast. That was the Nether Beast, and it was emitting a terrifying aura. Roar. It raised its head and let out a roar before lunging toward the heavenly god in the distance. A strange power fell on the surrounding heavenly gods. These heavenly gods found that their bodies were restricted, and they were unable to move. Then, a strange force dragged them toward the Netherworld's open mouth. Just as the Netherworld was devouring these Empyrean gods, other Empyrean gods in other directions made their moves. Countless powerful attacks containing the power of laws shot towards Netherworld. The world was illuminated by the energy, and the light exploded on Netherworld's body. The rumbling sounds continued, and the Netherworld's massive body began to sway, as if it would collapse at any moment. Roar. The Netherworld roared angrily again, and a sound wave spread out. The sound wave ignored the trapped Empyrean gods and extended to both sides, sending the Empyrean gods flying. The next moment, the dozen or so Empyrean gods who had lost their ability to move were swallowed into Netherworld's stomach. Then, the Netherworld energy on Netherworld's body dissipated, and a clone appeared. The moment he appeared, he immediately coughed up blood. After killing more than a dozen Empyrean gods, he didn't have time to rest. He saw new Empyrean gods surrounding him. A black blade formed entirely from Netherworld energy appeared in his hand. Murderous intent flashed in his eyes, and the Netherworld blade stabbed into a Empyrean god's body. At the same time, the other Empyrean god's attacks arrived. Blood splattered. A Empyrean god was killed, and the Netherworld clone was injured and sent flying. Below, Monk and the others looked at the battle in the sky helplessly. They were the best of their level, and their combat power was very strong. However, in front of Empyrean gods, they were nothing. In this battle, they weren't even qualified to be spectators, let alone participate. This was because any energy shockwave could obliterate them. They were furious and helpless. We should go. Zhong Haotian appeared in front of Monk. He glanced at the battle in the sky and said coldly, "What about them?" Monk asked. Mengyaro said she's not leaving. Devil Ape appeared on the other side of Monk. He had just gone to find Su Mengyaro and the others. Why not? Monk frowned and said, "Where there's life, there's hope." Mengyaro said we don't need to care about them. She wants us to leave quickly. We must stay alive. Devil Ape said again. All right then, let's go. Monk knew very well that Su Mengyaro had her own considerations. She must have her own thoughts if she didn't leave at this moment of life and death. At this time, The people in the city had already begun to flee. They couldn't stay for long. As soon as Monk and the others turned around, Sami, who was standing in the air, sensed something and glanced over. A light flashed in his eyes. A black hole immediately appeared where Monk and the others were standing. The black hole spread and swallowed the group of people who were about to escape. Rumbling sounds could be heard for a long time, and the destructive aura continued to wreak havoc. Soon, the shattered void healed, and everything that had been there turned into nothingness. Devil Ape and the others didn't even have time to scream before they were annihilated by the energy and died. A ray of light appeared in the void. There was a person in the light. It was Monk. Monk, who had a defensive light shield on him, survived. Except for him, the others were all dead. Sami couldn't help but be surprised when he saw this scene. Then, he formed a seal with his hands. The void above Monk's head broke open, and a light beam fell straight down. The light beam broke through Monk's defense and penetrated his body. The light shield that originally belonged to Monk was instantly torn apart and dissipated in the void. Monk looked at the hole in his chest and then looked up at Sami, who was sneering at him. Without saying a word, his body turned into countless light spots and scattered. No one can live. Sami's eyes were full of killing intent. At this moment, his gaze fell on the tree hall that still existed. Zichen's brides were there at this moment. Of course you have to die. But before you die, you have to suffer. Oh no, I'll let you enjoy. Sami's lips curled into a smile as he stepped forward. He disappeared in a flash and quickly reappeared in his original spot. He raised his head and looked at the sky. Two balls of energy appeared in the sky. They intertwined and kept expanding, forming a huge yin-yang diagram. Sami couldn't be more familiar with this diagram. He cried out involuntarily, Zichen. Zichen should be outside the Tianwu continent right now, fighting against Lord Sichu. He should be suppressed. How could he come here? The yin-yang diagram had already taken shape. Sami saw Zichen under it. Right now, Zichen's expression was cold as he looked down at everyone. Yin and yang light fell from the spinning yin-yang diagram. Beam after beam of light flew toward the celestial gods below. Chapter 3250. Many yin and yang lights fell from the sky. More than 20 celestial gods were enveloped by the light of the yin-yang diagram. They couldn't dodge the attack at all, let alone resist. That terrifying fluctuation caused despair to well up in their hearts. The yin and yang lights fell, and the terrifying power raged. The celestial gods died one after another. In the blink of an eye, more than 20 celestial gods died. The nearby celestial gods were shocked. They all retreated in fear. Sami stared at Zichen in disbelief. Wasn't Zichen fighting Master Stu right now? Why was he here? Could it be that he had already defeated Master Stu? If that was really the case, then none of them would be able to survive. He had seen how powerful Zichen was. At this moment, Sami sharply discovered that the yin-yang diagram above his head had dimmed. It seemed to have consumed a lot of energy. He knew that Zichen was very powerful and didn't need to worry about consuming energy. Why did he feel like he had consumed a lot of energy with just one attack? Sami came to a realization. It's a clone. It's not his real body. Everyone, attack! Sami shouted, indicating for the retreating celestial gods to attack again. Buzz! Zichen, who was standing under the yin-yang diagram, glowed. The power of yin and yang gathered in the yin-yang diagram above him. Looking at the shining yin-yang diagram, all the celestial gods were shocked. They started to retreat, their eyes full of fear. Die! A cold voice resounded. The yin and yang light fell from the sky. More than 20 celestial gods were enveloped by the light and died. Zichen's clone had consumed a lot of energy, and his aura was weak. However, his eyes were still cold. With a flash of light, a small flying knife appeared in his hand. With the flying knife in hand, he scanned the battlefield like two cold bolts of lightning. It flew to his hand. Lightning streaked across the sky and flew into the distance. Thunder sword manipulation. Poof! With a soft sound, the stone sword swept across the mind of a celestial god, instantly killing him. The celestial god fell to the ground. So powerful. Sammy's expression changed again and again. Poof, poof, poof. Just as Sami was hesitating whether or not to charge forward, the thunder sword killed another dozen heavenly gods. Such a scene of slaughter caused the expressions of the other heavenly deities to change greatly. They retreated in horror. Roar. A roar sounded from behind. Yang Wei controlled a giant black beast to devour the approaching heavenly deities. In another direction, the Netherworld clone transformed into the Netherworld and enveloped the surrounding heavenly deities. Wang. A streak of arrow light flew over, piercing through the body of a heavenly deity, obliterating his vitality. At this time, Fina had already shot more than 20 arrows. In a situation where every arrow could kill, her consumption had reached an unimaginable level. However, no abnormality could be seen on her face. That was because all of the consumption came from the creatures her main body produced. Countless living beings provided her with a vast amount of energy, allowing her to draw the Sky Splitter bow without any regard for energy expenditure. In the blink of an eye, more than 100 of the 300 heavenly deities had died. If the situation continued to develop, the other 200 would obviously die as well. Sandro was very glad. It was precisely because of Dia's pestering that they did not join the battle. Otherwise, the 9 of them would not have been able to avoid the fate of being killed. The hearts of the other 8 people were already filled with incomparable fear. Heavenly deities were already the pinnacle of existence in this world. With a thought, they could shatter heaven and earth and make the rules disappear. But now, such a powerful existence was killed in an instant. Sami looked at the battlefield in front of him and finally stopped hesitating. Zichen was just a clone. There was no need to be afraid of him. Swoosh. His figure shot up into the sky, a long spear appearing in his hand. He shouted, "Zichen, die." A streak of lightning appeared from the side and went straight for Sami. It was the thunder sword that was sure to kill. Sami shouted loudly. The long spear in his hand released a dazzling divine light toward the lightning. The long spear swept past with divine power, but it did not hit the lightning. Buzz. Just as the lightning was about to reach Sami, a divine light barrier appeared. There seemed to be a powerful divine beast sealed within the barrier, protecting Sami. Facing the lightning, the divine beast was instantly annihilated. The light barrier also exploded with a bang. However, the rapid lightning was also somewhat affected at this moment, allowing Sami to escape this calamity. This made Sami, who was originally a little nervous, feel much more relieved. It seemed that the strength of the clone was not as strong as the true body. In addition, the previous battle had consumed a lot of energy. At this moment, there was nothing the clone could do to him. Thus, he shook the long spear in his hand and shouted, "I'll deal with him. You all work together to kill the others." Yes. The heavenly deities nodded and retreated. Right at this moment, a light appeared in the void. 2 figures appeared from the light. Zichen. Seeing the 2 figures, the heavenly deities' expressions changed greatly. At this moment, there were 3 Zichens on the battlefield. However, the 3 Zichens were clearly different. The Zichen who appeared first was almost no different from the true body. However, these 2 emitted 2 different types of energy fluctuations. The former was a golden body. Its power was equal to the true body. The latter was a yin-yang clone. It represented the limit of Zichen's yin-yang energy. After the yin-yang clones appeared, yin-yang light flew out of their bodies. The light met in the air, forming a rotating yin-yang diagram. Boom! Under the shocked gazes of the heavenly deities, the yin-yang light fell from the sky, bringing with it a destructive aura. Any heavenly deity that was locked onto by the yin-yang diagram was unable to escape. They would be killed in the next moment. A new round of slaughter appeared. Outside the Tianwu continent, Zichen stood in the air. Stu stood in front of him, facing Zichen. "Before you die, do you have any last words? For example, do you want my people to treat your family well?" Stu smiled faintly. "The one to die will definitely be you." After saying that, Zichen's yin-yang energy revolved around him as he charged forward. He unleashed the 9 deaths of lightning to the extreme. Time seemed to stop. In this state, Zi Chen appeared in front of Stu like a streak of light. Boom! A huge tremor. The energy vibrated and rippled. Stu was sent flying backward. "This is your power. You're just SOSO." Stu's cold voice rang out. In the next instant, he appeared in front of Zi Chen and slammed his palm down. Zi Chen punched. Above his fist, yin-yang energy revolved. A terrifying wave of energy spread out. The two collided. Countless ripples spread out. Fortunately, this was the void. If they were on the continent, an entire continent would have been destroyed. Die. Zi Chen's eyes flashed coldly. The 9 deaths of lightning stopped time. In the instant that Stu couldn't move, he appeared in front of Stu and pressed a finger between his eyebrows. Poof. Chapter 3251. It pierced through Stu's forehead, but Zi Chen wasn't happy at all. He felt an unprecedented threat from Stu. He didn't think that he could kill him easily. As expected, Stu blinked. The wound on his forehead healed instantly. He punched at Zi Chen. There was a loud tremor in the void as divine power erupted. The space stilled. Zi Chen retreated. The instant time stopped allowed him to dodge this terrifying attack. Whoosh! Stabilizing himself, he charged forward again. Because it was his real body, he didn't need to worry about using energy. Every time Zi Chen moved, he would use his extreme speed to stop the space. But to Stu, the time was limited. It could only allow Zi Chen to attack once. Zi Chen's attack landed on Stu and sent him flying. "Your power isn't bad." Flying back, Stu laughed. Looking at Stu, yin and yang power spun in front of Zi Chen, turning into many yin and yang thunder lotuses. In an instant, more than 10,000 yin and yang thunder lotuses appeared. They flew to Stu and exploded. Countless booms resounded. Where Stu stood was covered by the furious yin and yang power. He was drowned. This attack could destroy a continent, but Zi Chen wasn't confident that it could kill Stu. Because this time, Stu looked stronger than last time. The furious yin and yang power dispersed. Stu reappeared. He wasn't hurt at all. Looking at Zi Chen, he laughed mockingly. "Can't you control the Thunder God Palace? Why don't you use it to attack?" Zi Chen pointed at the sky. Stu looked up instinctively. A huge yin and yang symbol appeared in the sky. It spun slowly. A powerful aura surged from it. The yin and yang light fell straight down. Stu looked up at the descending yin and yang light. He didn't dodge. Instead, he exclaimed, gathering yin and yang power in one body. "I'm envious. Lei Tianxi's world is worthy of being called a life star. It's a miracle when life evolves." The yin and yang light fell on him and started to wreak havoc. Stu's body was instantly pierced through. The indescribable power of yin and yang destroyed his vitality. Zi Chen looked at Sai Tu, whose body was no longer whole. His heart was still heavy. If it were any other celestial god, they would have died many times over. Although Sai Tu looked terrible, his aura hadn't weakened at all. Why? Last time, he was able to kill the other party. Why couldn't he do it this time? Even as this thought appeared in his mind, Zi Chen didn't stop. A steady stream of energy flowed into the yin-yang diagram, and the yin-yang light continued to wreak havoc. The void was completely filled with the power of yin and yang. Rumbling sounds continued to resound throughout the world. She couldn't see Stu anymore, but she could still feel his presence clearly. He was like a lighthouse in the dark night. How could this be? Zi Chen could not believe what he was seeing. Is this an illusion? Of course it's not an illusion. I've always been this powerful. Sai Tu's voice sounded. He walked out of the raging yin and yang power. His broken body was recovering quickly. The yin and yang light that fell after him couldn't hurt him anymore. When he walked out of the raging yin and yang light, his wounds were all healed. His divine robe fluttered in the wind, but it didn't have a speck of dust on it. The power of yin and yang is really strange. Even with my current competence, I can't coexist with one body. Amazing. Really amazing, Stu complimented, which surprised Zi Chen even more. It turned out that Stu didn't dodge because he was sensing. Stu continued, It seems like I can only understand the mysteries after I've refined the life star. Perhaps I can coexist with yin and yang at that time. In this state, Stu looked casual and carefree, which made Zichen feel more dangerous. Although he didn't want to admit it, he had to admit that he couldn't defeat the other. Stu looked at Zichen and said, "You're worthy of being the one who controls the life star's principles. Your senses are really sharp. The current me is indeed invincible to you. Where's the knife Lei Tianxia left for you? Didn't you use it to kill my clone last time? You can take it out and try." The knife Stu mentioned was a stone knife that his clone had taken to kill the enemy. Of course, Zichen couldn't take it out. Although Stu was strong, he couldn't sense what was happening on the life star because Zichen had used the principles to block all senses. In this situation, he didn't know how the battle on the life star was. However, according to his calculation, although there were only a few God Realm warriors on this life star, they still had a chance to win this battle. As for him, Zichen looked at Stu, his face icy cold. He dashed forward. Even if he had to die, he had to stall Stu. At least, he had to stall until the battle on the Sky Martial continent was over. Time stop. In the sky, the yin and yang pattern shone one more time. Stu's voice came from the rumbling energy. "Is that all you have left? If that's all you have, you should go now. It's meaningless to stall like this. I'm going to lose my patience soon." Stu could see that Zichen wanted to stall. Of course, Zichen couldn't linger any longer. He opened his world. It was his last trump card. As the world opened, Stu was swallowed. In the sky above the Sky Martial continent, the yin and yang clones were working together to control the yin and yang pattern, killing one God Realm warrior after another. At the same time, Zichen's clone was fighting against Sammy. The violent energy in the surroundings stopped in an instant. Zichen passed through the stopped energy and arrived in front of Sammy. "Time stop doesn't work on me," Sammy shouted. He swung the spear in his hand. Dazzling divine light illuminated the area. The spear swept over Zichen's clone. Zichen's body scattered instantly. Zichen appeared on the side and punched Sammy. Boom! Sammy was blown away. At the same time, a lightning bolt came from the side. It was the thunder saber. Clang! Sammy held the spear to block. The stone saber, which had shrunk countless times, was blown away. Sammy snorted. "You've consumed too much energy. You're not my match." Zichen's clone looked at Sammy and said coldly, "Really?" "Of course." Sammy smiled confidently and continued forward with the spear. He arrived in front of Zichen with the momentum of becoming one with the spear. Zichen looked at Sammy coldly. He didn't dodge this spear. The spear arrived, surrounded by divine light. With a puff, the spear in Sammy's hand pierced through Zichen's body. He really hit the target. Sammy was slightly stunned. He found it unbelievable. Zichen, whose body had been pierced, smiled at Sammy. The next moment, he grabbed the spear in Sammy's hand with both hands, and a trace of killing intent appeared in his eyes. Die! A bolt of lightning flew over from the horizon, streaking across the sky with the fastest speed in the world. Zichen's aura weakened in an instant, but the lightning became stronger and stronger. Sammy sensed Zichen's intention, and his expression changed drastically. At this moment, the spear was firmly grasped by Zichen. He directly abandoned the spear and flew back. At this moment, his face was full of horror. Zichen smiled again. It was too late. The thunder saber was extremely fast in the first place. If his real body used it here, Sammy couldn't have survived more than 2 attacks. At this moment, his clone had used all his strength and was actively taking Sammy's attack. It was impossible for Sammy to block it. Chapter 3252. Divine blood splattered in the sky as the stone saber pierced through Sammy's head. The power of yin and yang lightning surged, obliterating Sammy's vitality. The stone saber danced in a circle and stopped beside the doppelganger. At this time, the doppelganger was still holding the spear that pierced through his body. His aura was extremely weak and could dissipate at any time. As for Sammy, he looked at Zichen's doppelganger in disbelief. He retreated step by step, his eyes filled with extreme unwillingness. After a few steps, he fell to the ground. He never thought that he could not even defeat Zi Chen's doppelganger, who had consumed a lot of energy. In the distance, Sandro and the others were shocked. They did not expect that the strongest Sami would be killed by Zi Chen's doppelganger just like that. If the doppelganger was so powerful, then what about the real body? The other 8 heavenly gods also showed a touch of fear on their faces at this moment. Sami was dead, and the doppelganger could not hold on for long. He looked back at the netherworld doppelganger on the other side. The netherworld doppelganger sensed it and turned back. Zi Chen's golden body nodded at the netherworld doppelganger. With a thought, the flying saber flew toward the netherworld doppelganger. Swish! The flying saber continued to expand and turned back into a stone saber, which was held in the netherworld doppelganger's hand. Zi Chen's golden body's aura disappeared, and his body turned into light spots and dissipated. At the same time, the spear that pierced his body also turned into rays of divine light and disappeared with the golden body. In the sky, the yin and yang doppelganger controlling the yin-yang diagram had also consumed a lot of energy. After using the last attack to kill several heavenly gods, the 2 of them disappeared. For a time, only the netherworld doppelganger, Ji Wei, and Fina were left. As for Heavenbreaker, it was in the form of a bow and could be considered a powerful weapon. Different from before, the netherworld doppelganger had a stone saber in his hand this time. How is it? He held the stone saber and looked to the side. Ji Wei, whose whole body was covered in black light, said indifferently, "He's not dead yet." "That's good. If you can't do it, then retreat." The netherworld doppelganger rushed forward with the saber and slashed down. A black light like a waterfall shot out from the tip of the saber and swept into the distance. A heavenly deity was beheaded at the waist. Even more attacks landed on the netherworld clone, causing it to continuously retreat, coughing up blood as it did so. "This is the last place, where should we retreat to?" Yang Wei smiled bitterly and rushed forward. At this moment, he had also consumed a lot of energy. It wasn't that they weren't strong, but there were too many enemies. Fina stayed at the periphery and shot one arrow after another, each one taking a life. Her strength came from the deaths of countless living beings. "This is the world you cultivated." When Stu arrived at Zi Chen's world and sensed the rules of the world, he couldn't help but look surprised. "This is a perfect world. How is this possible?" He looked at Zi Chen from head to toe as if he had seen a ghost. Then Sai Tu seemed to think of something. He exclaimed, "Did Lei Tianxia give you the ripe heavenly Dao fruit?" "Heavenly Dao fruit?" Zi Chen frowned. This term was too unfamiliar to him. That must be it. Damn Lei Tianxia, so this is how he planned it. Sai Tu clenched his teeth. Even I know that he can never turn the tables. The so-called heaven-defying cultivator is just a joke. How could he not know? Now it seems that he bet all his treasures on the heavenly Dao fruit. Zi Chen didn't understand what Sai Tu was saying, but he had a feeling that it was a mistake to lead Sai Tu here. Sai Tu stared at Zi Chen and suddenly laughed. "It seems that you hit the jackpot. Zi Chen, do you know where your only chance to defy the heavens is?" Zi Chen shook his head. The bad feeling in his heart grew stronger. Sai Tu pointed at Zi Chen's world and said, "It's here. If you find a place and let your world grow slowly, when its level reaches a certain level, you can become as powerful as me and Lei Tianxia. This is the only chance for a heaven-defying cultivator to defy the heavens." Lei Tianxia racked his brains to get a heavenly Dao fruit. It turns out that he used it here. This is the real inheritance of a heaven-defying cultivator. This is the chance to defy the heavens. Fortunately, you brought me here. Otherwise, Lei Tianxia would have succeeded. Zi Chen was dumbfounded by Sai Tu's words. He knew that his world was perfect. The reason why he could become a divine realm expert was because of the fusion of the 3 tomes of heaven. But what was a heavenly Dao fruit? Although he didn't know what Sai Tu was talking about, Zi Chen knew that it was the biggest mistake of his life to bring Sai Tu here. Then this mistake would be fatal. "Good, very good. Zi Chen, I really have to thank you this time. Also, I have a whole new level of respect for Lei Tianxia." After that, Stu smiled and said, "Of course, I admire myself even more for making such a wise choice and discovering Lei Tianxi's greatest secret. To thank you for your unintentional action, I've decided to see how strong you are. It was obviously impossible for Zi Chen to drive Sai Tu away now. He could only fight now. Whether it was a mistake or not, he had no way out. Buzz. He mobilized the power of the world. Countless rules fell from the sky and pressed down on Sai Tu. Not bad. Your strength is not bad. Suppressed by the rules, Sai Tu couldn't move at all. However, he still looked relaxed. Die. Zi Chen's cold voice sounded. The light of yin and yang, supported by the rules of the world, fell from the sky and landed on Sai Tu. With a loud boom, Sai Tu's body exploded. Is he dead? Seeing Sai Tu's body explode, Zi Chen was stunned. Of course not. Sai Tu's shattered body immediately reassembled. His voice echoed in Zi Chen's world. You can't kill me now. Just do it. I still want to see how strong this world is. It's a pity that such a complete world is going to disappear soon. Seeing Sai Tu's body reassemble, Zi Chen's expression changed. He mobilized the rules of the world again. Sai Tu's body was suppressed again. Then the strong light fell and Sai Tu's body exploded again. In Zi Chen's senses, Sai Tu couldn't withstand this power. Why wasn't he dead? You want to know why? Sai Tu seemed to know what Zi Chen was thinking. His voice sounded again. It's actually very simple. Before that bastard's soul was complete, I couldn't do anything to it. That's why I couldn't appear. This situation lasted for countless years. Generation after generation of heavenly deities died. Under this situation, the wind of destruction couldn't do anything to me. However, I couldn't recover either. We were in a stalemate. But you appeared. You made the wind of destruction's soul complete. You killed my clone, but because the wind of destruction's soul is complete, it's no longer a threat to me. Therefore, my real body can appear. Of course, I have to thank you for taking the law fragment from the wind of destruction. It made my world complete. Otherwise, I wouldn't have come out so quickly. Chapter 3253. Zi Chen didn't know if Stu was telling the truth, but he regretted it now. He'd undoubtedly opened the door and let the wolf in. He couldn't chase it away now. From the moment he met Stu, Zi Chen knew that he wasn't Stu's match. Now that he heard Stu's words, the truth was almost confirmed. But he clearly didn't want it to end like this. His eyes shone with sharpness. His aura started to climb. The power of yin and yang swirled around him. He activated the thunder body. Seeing this, Stu clicked his tongue in wonder. Not bad at all. Unfortunately, you're still going to die. Zi Chen turned into lightning and charged forward. A strange wave spread out. Wherever it passed, time and space stopped. Poof! Zi Chen flashed past Stu's body. Blood splattered. Stu's body was separated from the middle. Stu's separated body fell to the ground like water. Then it merged back together and appeared there again. After reappearing, Stu looked at Zi Chen and said, "You're not bad. But you're destined to die." He glanced at Zi Chen's world again. Now that you've lost your greatest support, you can't survive. Zi Chen charged forward again. Light flashed past Stu. Stu's powerful body was cut in half again. That was all. It was impossible to destroy Stu's life force. Zi Chen obviously wouldn't wait for death. The power of the world's rules fell, suppressing Stu. That's it, Stu said, looking at Zi Chen. Zi Chen moved forward. Using the rules, he came before Stu and beheaded him. Blood splattered. Stu's flying head exploded. A new head appeared at his neck. He turned to Zi Chen. I really want to possess you. Even I'm envious of this world. Unfortunately, it's not suitable for me. Maybe Lei Tianxia thought of this too. He's waiting for me to possess him. I'm not stupid enough to destroy my own future. Zi Chen didn't speak. He turned around and killed again. He attacked again and again. Stu was killed again and again, but he was revived again and again. Zi Chen's heart had completely sunk to the bottom. But he couldn't give up, because he didn't know how the martial heaven continent was doing. Stu walked forward, looking at Zi Chen's world. He was like a tourist, giving opinions about the things around him. Zichen was still attacking. Puff. With a slash of the stone saber, a heavenly deity was killed. The netherworld avatar gasped for breath. His body was covered in bloody scars. On those bloody scars, there were remnants of the power of laws. The wounds could not heal. On the ground, corpses fell one after another. Even though they were already dead, their auras were still terrifying. Yang Wei was not much different from the netherworld clone. At this moment, he and the netherworld clone were fighting together. Fina was still in the distance. Although she was not injured, the living beings that she had created over the years were almost completely depleted in this battle. The entire city was beyond recognition. Even the martial heaven continent was beyond recognition. With the death of King Jiano, the ancient trees died one after another. That withered hall still existed. The girls who were supposed to be brides, who had waited for so many years, did not expect such an ending. Seeing their companions who had grown up with them die one after another, they felt incomparable grief in the depths of their hearts. But they did not cry. Because death was already very close to them. Su Mengyaro looked at this scene calmly. Zichen left without saying a word. She had already predicted the outcome. Looking at the disappearing golden body leaving behind the stone saber for the netherworld clone, she knew that the outcome was already decided. Her gaze swept across the battlefield. She looked back at Yi Qian and said, "You have to live." Yi Qian looked at Su Mengyao. Her beautiful face was wet with tears. "We have to go." Su Mengyao smiled at Yi Qian. There was no sadness, only calmness. If it really came to that, their lives would be worse than death. Lin Shui, Wang Xian'er, and Shangguan Yue looked at the battle outside. They watched as the heavenly deities were killed one after another. Suddenly, the netherworld clone's aura started to weaken rapidly. Zichen kept attacking, but it was to no avail. Stu, who was walking forward, suddenly stopped. He turned around and looked at Zichen. "Do you know why you can't kill me?" "Why?" Zichen asked. He did not continue to attack. "Because of your cultivation level," Stu said. "You're a heaven-defying cultivator. When your world grows to a limit, you may reach the heaven-defying realm." Hearing this, Zichen's expression changed drastically. "You're in the heaven-defying realm?" Stu shook his head and said, "Of course not. I'm in the spirit ascension realm." Looking at the confused Zichen, Stu continued, "You can think of the spirit ascension realm as the ascension realm." Ascension? Stu looked up at the sky. "That's right. It's ascension. This word is more suitable in this place. It means to break out of this world and ascend. Of course, you can also call it the heaven-defying realm. The outside world is very interesting. I want to go out and see because I've been trapped here for too long." Stu lowered his head and looked at Zichen. "I'm telling you this because you won't have the chance to see it again. The gate of heaven you can open is the outside world. After killing you and controlling Thunder God Palace, I'll open the gate of heaven and leave. Of course, before I leave, I want to take away my biggest harvest." That harvest was the Life Star, the world Stu had always wanted to fuse with. "Now, I'll let you feel my true power without any restrictions." Stu's aura started to soar. Zichen's world started to twist. It couldn't bear this power anymore. Zichen felt that Stu had changed. He felt like he was higher than the sky and the earth. At this moment, he couldn't help but think of the back of that world. Boom! A mountain exploded, turning into spiritual power and dispersing. Boom! 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 More mountains exploded, and Zichen's world began to collapse on its own. "It's over." Stu looked at Zichen and slapped down. A huge palm print fell from the sky. Zichen raised his hand to the sky. A yin-yang image appeared above his palm. He held it up to block the palm print. Boom! The palm print fell. The yin-yang image shattered instantly. Zichen flew backward. He felt like his bones were about to fall apart. His world started to collapse faster. The ground fell into the void. He didn't die. Seeing Zichen fly backward, Stu was surprised. Then he looked at the shattered land in the distance. "Seems like you've fused with the world." After saying that, He struck out with his palm again. Boom! Chen had just stood up when he was slapped down again. More pieces of land fell into the void. It's over. Stu slapped down several times. Chen couldn't fight back at all. The world started to collapse faster. Stu's eyes flashed coldly. He slapped down one last time. Chen's body exploded. Chapter 32:54. Stu stood in the void as Chen's perfect world collapsed. At the same time, Chen's body exploded. The perfect world was gone. Chen was dead. The surrounding space twisted and returned to the void. Stu was standing outside the Sky Marshal continent. He released his divine will. The entire lifestar was collapsing. The rules of heaven and earth were hidden again. Cultivation bottlenecks were lifted one after another. In Su Mengyao's eyes, the Netherworld clone's aura began to decrease rapidly. The other women also noticed this. They all looked at the Netherworld clone. Peng! The clone's body exploded, turning into countless beams of black light. In the next moment, the black light dispersed. All the heavenly gods were stunned. They didn't attack. Even if they did, they might not be able to destroy the clone's body. Is he gone? Xiao Wei was stunned. He raised his head to look at the sky. In the sky, vortexes appeared one after another. A powerful suction force appeared, beginning to devour the rich spiritual energy of heaven and earth. It was the opposite of when Chen had just broken through to the next realm. At this moment, the energy in heaven and earth was draining fast. It meant that Chen, the one who was connected to the fate of this lifestar, was dead. Chen was dead. What about them? The stone saber fell from the sky. Xiao Wei reached out and grabbed it. At this moment, only he, Fina, and Heavenbreaker were left on his side. Fight! He held the stone saber and charged forward with determination, rushing into the group of heavenly gods. Fina stood in the distance and shot arrows, one after another. The pagoda battle Empyrean god and the other 9 people who were blocking Sanderson were also stunned. The battle was over. When Sanderson saw the sudden death of Chen's clone, he understood the reason. While the other celestial gods were still in a daze, his figure flashed and he disappeared from where he stood. He appeared in the crumbling tree hall. The 5 women who were supposed to be his brides were heartbroken. They didn't seem to notice Sanderson walking in. Sanderson asked, "Any last words?" Su Mengyao's eyes fell on Sanderson. She slowly shook her head. "Rest in peace." 4 rays of light flew out from Sanderson's body and engulfed Su Mengyao, Wang Xian Lin Shui, and Shangguan Yu. Their vitality disappeared in the light. From their beautiful faces, there was no sadness, only relief. After all, Chen was already dead. There was no longer any meaning for them to live in this world. The 4 women were dead, but Yi Qian was still alive. Speaking of which, she was a goddess, and the pagoda battle heavenly deity was her father, who was just outside. Sanderson glanced at Yi Qian and turned to leave. If he killed Yi Qian, the pagoda battle would definitely go all out against him. As soon as he turned around, Sanderson paused, then turned around again. He saw that Yi Qian's aura was fading. "Why?" Sander asked. Yi Qian smiled and fell to the ground. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Several rays of light appeared outside. They were the heavenly deities who had followed Sanderson. When they came in and saw that the women were already dead, they couldn't help but be startled. "How did he die? Didn't that lord want him alive?" a heavenly deity asked. "Is that so?" Sanderson was startled, then said, "I forgot. However, Lord Sami has already died in battle. He can't enjoy them." After saying this, Sanderson waved his hand and a ray of light fell on the 5 women. Their corpses began to disintegrate. The pagoda battle heavenly deity stood outside and didn't come in. Chen was already dead, and the battle was thus decided. For her, this is also a kind of relief. After all, the person she loved is already gone, and so are all her friends, Lian Ya said, looking at the pagoda battle. The pagoda battle naturally understood this. Otherwise, how could Yi Qian have killed herself in front of him? However, his beloved daughter had died just like that. His heart was filled with pain. However, He was powerless to do anything about it. Boom! A huge tremor came from the sky. Shoji, covered in blood, was sent flying. His body heavily smashed into the ground, sending up countless clouds of dust. Shoji once again soared into the sky, the stone blade in his hand slashing at the enemy's body. Pu. At the same time, an energy sword of light appeared from behind and pierced through Yang Wei's back. Shoji turned around, and his stone blade streaked across the sky. He had consumed a lot of energy, and the amount of energy he could control was very little. However, his stone blade was sharp enough and powerful enough. Another heavenly deity had died. There were originally more than 300 heavenly deities, but now there were less than 100 left. The heavily injured Shoji once again charged at his opponent. A heavenly deity silently appeared behind him, holding a long blade formed from heavenly deity power in his hand. He slashed at the back of Shoji's neck. Shoji didn't notice anything. He only had eyes for the opponent in front of him. Whoosh! Just as the blade was about to land, an arrow flew from the sky and pierced through the heavenly deity's body. The arrow carried the heavenly deity far away. Shoji arrived in front of his opponent and slashed down with his stone blade. Pu. The blade landed, and several more fatal wounds appeared on his body. Fina's energy consumption was increasing. She couldn't always resolve the crisis for him. Actually, at this moment, Shoji was already at the end of his rope. He stood in the sky, and several more attacks appeared around him. In an instant, Shoji's body was pierced by several energy blades. He slowly turned around, looked in a certain direction, and said, "Goodbye, my friends." Blood seeped from the corner of his mouth. Shoji's body plummeted to the ground. Bang! When he hit the ground, Shoji's body disintegrated into countless rays of black light. The place Shoji was looking at before he died was where Shin Lin, Ben Senlu, Sina, and the others were hiding. They were all sons of heavenly deities. Their heavenly deity father would naturally protect them in secret. At this moment, watching Shoji die, they were all silently weeping. Lei Yue looked around and sighed helplessly. Heaven and earth were collapsing. Torrential rain poured down, washing away the bloodstains on the ground. It was as if heaven and earth were mourning. Stu appeared out of nowhere. He scanned the area with his divine sense. When he discovered that there were still a few heavenly deities left, he was very surprised. "Potian, Fina, submit to me, and you will live." He turned around and looked at Fina, who was holding her bow in the distance. Fina looked at Stu and said coldly, "Our paths are different, and we cannot work together. Then go to hell." Stu's expression was cold. He pointed a finger at the air. A vortex appeared out of nowhere, forming a tunnel. At the end of the tunnel, there was a mother nest that wasn't very big. "It seems that you've reached your limit." Looking at Fina's main body, Stu pointed a finger forward. As a mother nest, Fina's main body wasn't small. However, because of the previous battle, she had used up too much of her main body's energy. With a bang, the mother nest exploded. Fei-Ene's doppelganger in front of him distorted and then disappeared. Potian had returned to his main body. Naturally, he was extremely weak. "Stu, Master will not let you go," Potian said coldly. "He died a long time ago. There's no chance of him coming back to life." Stu's palm fell. A palm print appeared in the sky. The palm print hit Potian and smashed him into the ground. Boom! A bottomless palm print appeared on the ground. Stu raised his head and looked at the sky. There was a palace floating there. The surface of the palace was surrounded by lightning. It was the lightning god palace. "All you can do is watch." Stu laughed mockingly. A vortex appeared behind the lightning god palace. Then, it disappeared. "When I recover, I will refine you." Stu looked at the lightning god palace that had disappeared. Chapter 3255. Countless fragments of the continents floated in the void. Some of them were torn into pieces by the turbulence, while others drifted away until they disappeared completely. Those continents came from an independent world that used to be called a perfect world. That world had collapsed, and the continents of different sizes had appeared. In the void, turbulence could be seen everywhere. Continents disappeared one after another. A very inconspicuous landmass was swept away by the turbulence, and under the ravaging of the turbulence, the landmass began to disappear. However, this time, when the continent disappeared, there was a light ball that hadn't vanished yet. Inside the light ball, two beams of light were entangling with each other. They looked like two yin-yang fishes chasing after each other. The light ball covering the yin-yang fishes was releasing tricolored light. From a distance, this tricolored light ball looked like a ripe fruit that had fallen from a tree. Within the three balls of light, there would occasionally be flashes of power, but they were not the same. It had the power of the 5 elements of metal, wood, water, fire, earth, and the power of the sun, moon, star, and thunder. It also had the magical body, energy, and soul energy moving. No one knew where this light ball came from or where it wanted to go. It was moving with the turbulence unceasingly. The yin-yang fish within the ball of light were chasing each other rapidly, as if they wanted to devour each other or fuse into one. During this time, the energy protecting the yin-yang fish released strands of light that entered the yin-yang fish. After the perfect world had collapsed, Saitu hadn't noticed this scene. At this moment, the light ball was in this endless void. Saitu wouldn't have noticed it either. The light ball drifted away like a traveler traveling through space and time. No one knew where it was heading. Perhaps one day, it would stop. The war between the God Realm experts had only broken out in the Sky Marshal continent. It didn't affect the other continents and planets on this life star. After this war, the Sky Marshal continent's surface area was reduced by half. The sea of trees had withered, and there weren't many signs of life left. Giano, the king, was dead. Those who deserved to die were all dead. Saitu had taken his people and left. The other God Realm experts had followed him. All of the surviving humans and creatures living on this continent had already fled this continent. The rules of heaven and earth had changed one more time. The power of the rules had decreased several times. The holy land of cultivation had become a dangerous barren land. Although the God Realm experts were dead, the remaining energy in their bodies was still intimidating. Very few living beings could withstand such a terrifying aura. The once prosperous Marshal Heaven continent had used many years to develop to such a scale. However, it had been destroyed in less than a day. A huge black hole in the palm appeared very clearly. Occasionally, there would be magma gushing out from it. It was left behind when Saitu killed Potian with his last palm strike. There was still some power left, and it couldn't be healed. Saitu returned to the God world and personally guarded the core of the God world. As for Heavenly God Tarjan and the others, they expanded one Heavenly God city after another with Saitu's divine palace at the center. These Heavenly God cities were also the core of their respective regions, and they continued to develop new powers. After Saitu returned to the God realm, he chose to go into seclusion. He didn't say anything else to the heavenly gods. The immortal world began to develop rapidly. With many heavenly deities overseeing it, the rules here were even better. All the immortal clans settled down. No one of the God clan knew about the battle with the life stars. Or rather, the ones who knew didn't intend to spread the news. Sandro stayed in his heavenly God palace. As he used to be the first god of heaven, he had a high position in the divine world. After returning from the life star, he often looked at the sky outside the window, lost in thought. He had witnessed Zichen's power and the rise of the life star. At the same time, he had witnessed the decline of everything. Was it going to end like this? The current generation of heavenly deities had died, and after many years, a new generation of heavenly deities had appeared. And so on. The great master called Saitu had appeared suddenly. No one knew who he was. Sandro had discreetly asked Lei Ya and Tarjan, but they didn't know who Saitu was. They just said that Saitu was related to the God world. The last time the God world collapsed for no reason, it was said that Saitu's clone in the God world was killed. Did Zichen really die just like that? Sandro still couldn't believe it. The destruction of the life star continued for a long time. It was like a chaotic world had arrived. Mountains collapsed, rivers withered, and everything was destroyed. The massive spirit vein had lost all of its spirit energy in just a blink of an eye. The small entrances to the small worlds around the world had disappeared. All the marks were gone. The entire life star was plunged into panic. This situation lasted for 1,000 years before it stabilized. After 1,000 years, the chaos of the life star had stopped. However, the rules of heaven and earth had dropped to the lowest level. In many places, core realm experts were the old monsters. False heaven experts were the bottlenecks that the super geniuses couldn't reach. The saints and the existences at the level of the God clan had chosen to cultivate in seclusion. Since the rules of heaven and earth had suppressed them so much, they couldn't recover if they used energy recklessly. Moreover, they could even cause their realms to drop. It could be said that the current rules of heaven and earth were hostile to all life stars and the existences above the heaven realm. This situation would continue endlessly until the next generation of heavenly deities grew up and opened a new era. After 1,000 years, the light orb in the void had drifted to an unknown place. Such a long time wasn't enough for Psi-2 to recover completely, let alone refine the life star. Time continued to fly. The divine world was still peaceful and thriving. The second 1,000 years had come. The stable life stars continued to develop. Core realm experts appeared one after another. To some people with sharp senses, the evil aura of heaven and earth seemed to weaken a little. The third 1,000 years had come. Spirit veins began to appear on the continents of this life star. Although the range of the spirit veins wasn't big, it was much better than 2,000 years ago. The rules of heaven and earth were still suppressing them. However, many people could feel that the rules of heaven and earth were recovering. Will a new heavenly deity appear? All the people who knew the situation had the same thought. They were hopeful but regretful at the same time. The arrival of a new era meant that everything in the past was gone. Was Zi Chen's era really over? 10,000 years had passed in the blink of an eye. Psi-2 had recovered completely. The divine world had stabilized completely. It was the first time he had left his temple. As he walked out of the temple and released his aura, the power of countless principles in the divine world fell. The door to the heavenly deity realm was opened. Now, King God realm experts didn't need to use the principal crystal to become heavenly deities. Of course, they still needed to comprehend. Not everyone could break through the realm. Chapter 32:56. Psi-2 left the temple and entered the void. Lei Tianxi's suppression of him back then had been completely removed. However, he couldn't leave this world yet because the gate of heaven was already closed. Even with his current strength, he couldn't forcefully break open this world. Lightning Divine Temple. Next, he could only refine the Lightning Divine Temple. He could only open the gate of heaven and leave once he had complete control over this place. Back then, he had fought Lei Tianxia because of this world's uniqueness. The only thing he regretted was that he couldn't refine Zi Chen's perfect world 10,000 years ago. However, it was fortunate that he couldn't refine it. If he could, he might not be Zi Chen's match. The heavenly Dao fruit was wasted just like that. Lei Tianxia, you sure are willing to part with it? Psi-2 began to search for the Lightning Divine Temple. To refine the world Lei Tianxia left behind, Psi-2 had to first find the Lightning Divine Temple and refine it. The ball of light continued to float in the depths of the void. The yin-yang fish in the ball of light spun even faster. After absorbing the energy from the protective ball of light, it started to change as it spun. The yin-yang energy started to fuse. Time had no meaning in this place. Therefore, no one knew how long it would take for the yin-yang fish to truly fuse together. At the same time, no one knew what the yin-yang fish would look like after fusing. As time passed, the energy in the protective ball of light was slowly depleted. Its luster gradually dimmed. It looked like a fruit that had lost too much life force. This energy provided great help to the yin-yang fish's fusion. The yin-yang fish had already reached the point where they were one with each other. After a long journey through the void, the energy in the ball of light finally disappeared completely. As the last bit of energy dissipated, the ball of light exploded with a bang. It turned into countless specks of light and dissipated. The yin-yang fish absorbed the last bit of energy. Then, it trembled slightly as if yin and yang were truly fusing into one. A bolt of lightning shot out from the ball of light. It emitted an unusual aura and fluctuation as it spread through the void. As the fluctuation spread, a strange power of law spread in all directions. Wherever this power passed, the turbulence in the void dissipated. The original ball of light disappeared and a ball of lightning appeared in the void. The ball of lightning flashed with yin-yang light from time to time. It seemed to contain the power of two types of lightning. Found it. Just as a strange ripple appeared in the depths of the void, Stu opened his eyes. In that instant, the lightning divine hall, which was hidden extremely deeply, unknowingly emitted a ripple. Although the ripple disappeared in a flash, it still allowed him to accurately sense its location. After locking onto the direction of Thunder God Palace, Psi 2 disappeared from the void. After returning to the divine world, Psi 2 summoned all the heavenly gods. When the heavenly gods arrived at Psi 2's divine palace, Psi 2 looked at them and said, "Go and gather the god race's army. We are going to attack the Thunder God Palace." To these Empyrean gods, the lightning divine hall was not unfamiliar to them. However, what surprised them was that Stu had actually used the word attack. With his current battle prowess, how could the lightning divine hall still be a threat? Stu obviously didn't want to explain for them. He said directly, "I will give you 1 month to gather. Don't send the oracles. Send the immortal generals and immortal kings." Sandini asked, "Should we inform the creatures from the alternate space-time?" "No need. Our people will go," Stu said calmly. The Empyrean gods left. Next, it was time to gather the god race. 1 month later, all the experts the god race could dispatch had arrived. Then, they were led by the Empyrean gods. According to Stu's order, they gathered outside. Stu walked out of his mansion. Everywhere he looked, there were god race members. Those Empyrean gods stood in front of the god race troops. They were the commanders of the god race troops. "Let's go." Stu turned around and looked at the void. The space there began to distort. A massive passage appeared. Stu was the first to enter. Then, under the guidance of the Empyrean gods, all the god race troops entered the passage. This passage was huge and long. It seemed to have no end. Stu walked at the front of the passage. Like a beam of light, he headed straight for the end of the passage. At the end of the passage was a void. There was a huge palace in the void. It was the most mysterious lightning divine hall on the Life Star. At this moment, the lightning divine hall wasn't stationary. It was moving into the depths of the void. This was also the main reason why Stu couldn't sense the lightning divine hall's existence for a long time. It was because it was always moving. At this moment, Stu appeared. Looking at the lightning divine hall that was still moving, he couldn't help but sneer. "Stop." A powerful force descended from the void and enveloped the lightning divine hall. The advancing lightning divine hall seemed to be grabbed by a strange force. It floated in midair and stopped moving forward. Behind Stu was the mighty god race army. When they saw the lightning divine hall, their expressions changed. They didn't expect Master Stu to mobilize so many people just for this average-looking palace. "Hall spirit, why haven't you opened the door to welcome your master?" Stu looked at the lightning divine hall in front of him and asked indifferently. "My master isn't you." The hall spirit's voice came from the lightning divine hall. Stu smiled slightly and said, "It seems like you still can't see the situation clearly. This is good." An aura that far surpassed that of an Empyrean god was released from Stu's body. Sensing this aura, the god race troops were all terrified, including the Empyrean gods. At this moment, Stu seemed to represent the world. He was the true ruler of the world. "Open." He formed a sword with 2 fingers and slashed forward. A ray of swordlight shot forward, slicing through the void and landing on the door of the palace. With a loud bang, the door of the lightning divine palace, which was indestructible in the eyes of the majority of the people, was easily shattered apart. "Kill without mercy." Stu's cold voice resounded in the minds of all the god race troops. The Empyrean god waved his hand and slashed down like a blade. "Kill." Battle cries rang out everywhere. All the god race troops charged in. Within the lightning divine hall, there had always been experts guarding it. This was something that Psi 2 knew. And he knew very well that the Hall Spirit could control those existences to fight. All the God Race troops charged in. After entering, they realized that the palace was actually another world. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that it was a world. The murderous God Race troops arrived, but they were shocked to find that it was empty. There wasn't a single person here. Sina and the others who had been here before also had strange expressions. From what they knew, the lightning divine hall shouldn't be like this. Hall Spirit, where are your people? Come out and fight. Stu walked in, his voice echoing in the lightning divine hall. Without my master's orders, I have no right to command them, the Hall Spirit said. You're talking about Zi Chen? He's already been dead for tens of thousands of years, Stu said disdainfully. Chapter 3257. Within the rotating yin-yang fish, the two types of energy would sometimes merge and sometimes disperse. It was not stable. The yin-yang fish glowed brighter and brighter, and a figure appeared within it. A strong spiritual aura was released from it. At the same time, a strong devouring power emerged from the ball of light. The devouring power spread and formed a huge vortex. The energy in the void quickly gathered towards it. The ball of light absorbed the energy in the void and began to expand. Finally, it became the size of a person. During this time, an incalculable amount of void energy was being absorbed. With a bang, the ball of light that was the size of a person shattered and turned into pure light. The scattered light was the purest energy in the world. In the blink of an eye, it was absorbed. When the light faded, a person appeared. It was Zi Chen. He was naked and emitting an infinite amount of golden light. His eyes were blank as he looked around blankly. It was as if he had no soul. After a while, one scene after another appeared in his mind. He remembered that on the day of his wedding, he fought with Stu and was killed by Stu. That was the place where his final memory was fixed. Then, another image appeared. It was a ball of light traveling through the void. Within the ball of light, the power of yin and yang was rotating. It was the purest power of yin and yang. It was the core source of yin and yang. Seeing the power of yin and yang slowly evolving, the blankness in Zi Chen's eyes gradually disappeared. It's the heavenly book. The power of yin and yang was Zi Chen's source of yin and yang. It was left behind after his body shattered. As for the ball of light that protected the source of yin and yang, it was the 3 heavenly books that he had collected. Stu had mentioned the heavenly Tao fruit. Zi Chen did not know about this. However, the formation of his world was not only related to the heavenly books, but also to the region seed that he had obtained. In short, he was very surprised by this revival. Other than that, he had also obtained an even greater reward. It was the fusion of yin and yang. This was a true fusion, not a peaceful coexistence like before. Naturally, this was related to the 3 heavenly books. This was because the heavenly books had completely disappeared this time. They had completely fused with his power of yin and yang. Could the heavenly books be the heavenly Tao fruit? Zi Chen guessed. However, it was only a guess. Light flowed on the surface of his body and turned into a black robe. Zi Chen closed his eyes and started to sense everything. It's over. That's good. Everything should come to an end. Zi Chen's figure flashed and disappeared from the void. The God Race didn't encounter any enemies on the first level, and the Hall Spirit didn't show up. He only had a simple conversation with Stu. Stu smiled. He did not believe the heavens. He continued to meet the heavenly book. The Lightning Divine Palace had a total of 9 layers of space. The space was extremely large, comparable to 9 worlds. The heavenly Tao fruit of heaven of yin of yang space of the heavenly books. Stu sneered, "You're quite patient. Let's see how long you can hold on." Heavenly yang heavenly God, Stam was of the heavens was the STI was. It. After reaching the 8th level, Stu still didn't see any enemies. He was surprised and said, "Hall Spirit, it seems like you're ready to submit to me." Whoosh! With a flash of light, the Thunder God Temple Spirit appeared. That was a tall existence, and his entire body was enveloped by lightning. "What do you mean?" The heavenly God of Heaven Space Temple looked at Stu. "Your main body should be on this level, right?" You opened the door and let us come here. Aren't you ready to submit? Stu said. The heavenly god of Heaven Space Temple said, Actually, I've been submitting. Stu burst out laughing when he heard that. The heavenly god of Heaven Space Temple continued, Unfortunately, that person is not you. Stu stopped laughing. His eyes flashed coldly. Are you talking about your dead master? Or are you waiting for a new master? Let me tell you, the heavenly defier will never appear again. Lei Tianxia, that idiot, died long ago. How could he scheme against me? The heavenly god of Heaven Space Temple suddenly cupped his fists and bowed. Heavenly god of Heaven Space Temple greets master. Stu was surprised by the heavenly god of Heaven Space Temple's sudden action. Then, he laughed proudly. Not bad. It's good that you know what's good for you. No need to be so polite. A calm voice sounded. Then, a ray of light appeared in front of the heavenly god of Heaven Space Temple. Seeing the person in front of them, the people behind them screamed in surprise. The heavenly gods changed their faces, looking at the person in front of them in disbelief. He's still alive. Heavenly god Sandro's eyes changed. At this moment, he was excited. Heavenly god Pagoda fighting and the others looked at Zichen in front of them in astonishment. Zichen was still alive. But the Lifestar's rules were broken. What was going on? Stu also saw Zichen. He blinked his eyes and looked at Zichen carefully. Compared to the others, he was more shocked because he had killed Zichen with his own hands. His soul consciousness had locked onto Zichen's life force. How could he still be alive? Who are you? Stu stared at Zichen, asking indifferently. Who did you say I was? Zichen smiled coldly. Impossible. Zichen is dead. I killed him with my own hands. How could you still be alive? Stu's calm face was gone. He was so excited. This was because he felt threatened by Zichen. This shouldn't have happened. Only someone in the heaven-defying realm could threaten him. However, in this world, it was impossible for a true heaven-defying realm cultivator to appear. Master, what should we do now? The temple spirit of thunder asked respectfully. Since they came, we naturally have to face them. Are they okay? Zichen said. I don't know when Master will wake up, so I've been recovering faster. I've already fully recovered, the temple spirit of thunder said. Zichen nodded. Then let them join the battle. Yes. The lightning god temple spirit waved his hand and an enormous vortex appeared in the sky. Light descended from the vortex. The light fell to the ground and turned into human figures. These people all had powerful auras. Their battle prowess was equivalent to a rank 9 expert. At the same time, they all had one thing in common. They didn't know what was going on. Demonic ape, aren't you dead? The good and evil monk looked at the demonic ape beside him and said doubtfully, No, I should be dead too. His memory was still stuck at the time when Sami glanced at him. At that time, the demonic ape and Zhong Haotian had died. He had died soon after. Chapter 32:58. Evil good and evil monk and the demon ape weren't the only ones alive. Not far away, Su Mengyao, Lin Shui, and the others were also alive. Among them was Yi Qian, who'd already committed suicide. Their beautiful faces were filled with confusion. They didn't know what to do. But soon, they saw a person standing in front of them. It was Zichen. In Su Mengyao's memories, Zichen's nether clone had suddenly died. Obviously, that meant his real body had been killed. But now, Zichen was also alive. What had happened? Hehe, I knew you wouldn't die so easily. Heavenbreaker's laughter rang out. He'd discovered that he was also alive. Beside him stood Fina. Right now, Fina was very excited. She'd discovered that this human body had become her original body. She was no longer a broodmother. She was a real human. But she still had the broodmother's methods from back then. I'm not dead either. Chi Wei stared at himself in shock. Black light swirled around his body. He discovered that the black light, which he'd felt a little awkward before, was very easy this time. It was as if it was his own arm. He didn't know what had happened. He should have died back then, but he was actually still alive. The same scene played out in other places. It could be said that the experts who'd participated in the wedding that day, those who'd died because they'd failed to escape, had all come back to life in this situation. Many who hadn't been at the wedding and had been innocently affected had also come back to life today. After a moment of confusion, cheers rang out. It was as if they'd reunited with their loved ones. Yi Qian looked at the figure in front of her and cried tears of joy. Sai Tu's expression darkened when he realized that things had gone out of his control. He said coldly, "So what? I said that the dead's schemes can never compare to those of the living. Not only will you die today, but so will your friend. This time, I won't let you come back to life." Zi Chen smiled. "Is that so? Then let's fight to the death." Zi Chen then said to the hall spirit, "Open up a battlefield." In the sky, the void distorted and formed a space of its own. This is the battlefield where Lightning Divine Palace has the highest authority. Only one person can come out alive after entering. Do you dare to enter? Zi Chen looked at Stu. Stu snorted coldly and said, "Your world has already collapsed. You don't have any more means to go against me. Why wouldn't you dare?" With that, Stu shot into the sky and flew into the space. Zi Chen didn't go there immediately. He looked at the God Clan and said, "If you leave now, I can let bygones be bygones. If you insist on staying, you will be the enemy of this life star." Then, Zi Chen looked to the other side and saw a black shadow standing there. The power of the underworld surged on the black shadow, but it was not a clone of the underworld, but the real underworld. "Take care of yourself." After glancing at Netherworld, Zi Chen soared into the sky and entered the space. Stu stood in front of Zi Chen and looked at him coldly. Outside the space, the battle did not take place. Or rather, there was no struggle for the time being. "You will still die today." This was Stu's opening speech. He released his aura. It was powerful, but it didn't shake this space. "The gap between you and me is like the gap between heaven and earth. Before this world was sealed, only Lei Tianxia could resist me. Now that Lei Tianxia is dead, no one can be my match." Zi Chen looked at Stu and said, "I remember that you didn't talk so much last time. Or, are you afraid?" Stu snorted. "Afraid? Are you kidding me? I'm just telling you that you will never surpass me because the world created by the heavenly Dao fruit has collapsed. You have lost your last chance. Actually, even if that world exists, I don't think you can reach the realm of defying the natural order. Because this world is sealed. In your words, the gate of heaven is closed. This world will never have a heaven-defying warrior, thus, you will never be my match. Seems like you're really afraid." Zi Chen smiled. The light of yin and yang flashed in front of him and turned into a yin-yang diagram that he held in his hand. The yin-yang diagram spun rapidly in his palm, releasing a terrifying aura. Hum. The yin-yang diagram vibrated and released a beam of light containing the power of yin and yang. The light flew toward Stu. Stu clenched his fist, which glowed with light, and punched forward. With a loud boom, the light from the yin-yang diagram exploded. This was the beginning of the battle. Kill. Battle cries rang out below as the two sides began to fight. This was the true final battle. The 100 or so gods of the divines charged forward. Yi Wei, Potian, and Fina attacked one after another. Zi Chen's netherworld clone had become the true netherworld. After a moment of hesitation, it also joined the battle. It was more adept at controlling the power of the netherworld, and its combat strength was much stronger than the original clone. The monk and the others also joined the battle. This battle was naturally between gods, and the divine king against the ancestral king. The battle below didn't attract Stu's attention. After shattering the light of yin and yang, he said indifferently, "I already said that you are no match for me." With that, he charged forward like a beam of light. In an instant, he was in front of Zi Chen and punched. With a boom, Zi Chen flew backward. The light of yin and yang protecting him began to distort and disperse as he flew backward. "This is your full power." Zi Chen stopped a few hundred feet away. He looked at Stu and said indifferently, "This is just a test. It seems that you are not much stronger than before." Stu's eyes flashed coldly. An even more powerful aura was released. This aura could be called the power of the heaven-defying realm. Stu put 2 fingers together and a beam of sword chi shot out. In an instant, the sword chi reached Zichen and pierced his heart. So fast. Looking down at the bloody hole in his heart, Zichen's expression changed. Is this the difference between us? Of course, Stu said coldly. I am the ruler of the world. Today, after you die, this world will be mine. Lei Tianxia will forever be a thing of the past. After saying that, he threw out another punch. The moment the light of the fist appeared, there was a boom in the distance. Zichen was sent flying. The difference between their realms was so great that Zichen couldn't see Stu's speed clearly. He couldn't fight back and could only take the beating. Outside the space, many people saw this scene. They began to worry about Zichen. After 2 consecutive attacks, Zichen was injured. Stu looked at him and said coldly, now you know the difference between us. Zichen nodded and said, I know. But the difference isn't so great that it can't be made up. Stu's expression changed. Zichen stood up. The light of yin and yang flowed around him. This time, it didn't occupy half of his body. Instead, it revolved around him. In his abdomen, the ball of yin and yang that stored energy was also spinning rapidly.